Futures back in negative territory this morning, looking to extend declines we saw on Friday's session, pushing lower, in fact, as we speak as well. The Dow down now 4 weeks in a row, coming off another sell-off for all three U.S. indexes on Friday. It's arguably the biggest week for earnings this week coming up as well. All the mega cap tech names, I should say, set to report this week. Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, Meta, all to come. So it should be exciting to say the least. We get Twitter news, more Twitter news this morning. So Twitter up nicely, about 5% so far. Pre-market looks like this deal with Elon could happen as soon as today. As I said, the Dow posting one of its worst days since October of 2020 on Friday, down more than 900 points to wrap up the week. We had the S&P and NASDAQ both down 2.8 and 3.8% on Friday afternoon. Earnings this morning, just Coca-Cola really the biggest one to talk about. Decent report for them, already red to green for KO shares here in the pre-market, and crude oil the other direction this morning, down big time, 4.5%, back below $100 for crude. It's Monday, April 25th, 2022. TraderTV.live starts now. Yep, more red to deal with to start things off once again this morning. You can see not as bad, I guess, is the positive way to look at it as we saw on Friday, but about 0.6% right now for all three U.S. markets in negative territory. TSX futures here in Toronto, full percent to the downside. Brazil open trading lower. Crude, well, I mean, it's, you know the story. 4.5%. Bitcoin and Ethereum tumbling so far as well. 3.5% there for ETH on some negative comments over the weekend as well. Welcome, guys. It is a brand new week. The COVID train continues here in the office. 2 weeks ago, it was my turn. Neil was off last week with COVID.
It's not funny.
Now it's Sean's turn. So our great friend Arun back with us once again, sitting in for Sean this week. So we're always happy to have Arun with us. But hey, Neil's back. Great to have Neil back in the building.
Yeah, and it's not funny, obviously, you know, and we wish on all the best. And, you know, it's one of those things, like, life happens to you. This is all real life here. I do want to say at the outset, it was pretty humbling and pretty cool. Like, I had people, like, reaching out to me randomly, like, are you doing okay? Like, God bless you and your family, and that kind of thing. And I almost didn't even know how to take it, because I'm like, okay, people get sick, and it was rough, but, you know, the outpouring, it was actually really, really cool, and thank you guys so much. Family's doing better now. I'm just glad to be back. I'm just trying to figure out what y'all did with the market, because, like, I know we had some down weeks, but, like, come on, Arun. Yeah. You guys couldn't take care of it for 1 week. Now Friday happened. I'm like, what is going on here? It's a lot of wild action. Of course, we'll talk some Twitter as well, because that deal seems like it could be happening, and there's some small caps out there, but wow, the real story is how bad things got last week, especially on Friday.
Yeah, it's been quite exciting leading up to, as Brendan mentioned, one of the most exciting weeks when it comes to earnings and just overall market activity. So it's going to be interesting this week. We're going into the final week of the month, final few trading days of the month. You pair that with a ton of big tech earnings. After two large down moves, we are down from the day that we fell off. 4,500 was the top, roughly 4,500. We are now just bouncing off of 4,230. So we're looking north of 250 points here to the downside in just a couple days. You know, when a market moves like that, there's going to be bound to be some opportunities, on whether it's a small little bounce to the upside or at least even an opportunity to fade back to the downside. But opportunities abound. This market's going to give us something. Brendan's going to give it to us right now.
Yeah, it's not good, to say the least, for the market overall. As we said, big earnings to come this week. Always headlines to keep on watch as well. Part of that leading to this move in crude oil this morning. Again, 4.5% to the downside for crude. Before we go any further, let's bring in Miss V. She's here as well. Good morning.
That's right. Good morning and welcome back, everyone, guys. I wish you a wonderful, profitable day. Please like this video and let's get it started, Brendan.
Yeah, let's jump right into things. Lots to get through as we head to the open. A little delayed on our graphics this morning, but that's okay. If you missed it, there's more rumblings on the Twitter Elon front. Looks like this deal, I mean, multiple reports suggesting This deal, guys, could get done as soon as today. We learned on Thursday and Friday of last week that he already has multiple sources for financing secured for this. Yeah, $46 billion offer for Twitter. So 54.20 looks like it might actually get done.
It's like, as you say that, I actually just got triggered into this NKTX, which just took out the top. That is also on the watch list. So I'm going to get some orders out for that. But the Twitter story didn't go away. That was the one thing, like, talking about continuation, like, it was basically as if nothing had happened. Like, Twitter's still the lead story. Just keep in mind, like, that 54.20, if they accept that deal, it's not like you get that price right away. So that whole limited upside thing definitely comes in play. Let's say they were to announce it right now. You still got the time value money, how long it could possibly take that deal to close. There's a lot of things that you have to factor in there when you're considering a move like this. It's like, okay, sure, everyone wants to have the stock go to 54 almost instantly, but that's generally not the way that it ends up playing out. It's very unlikely there's going to be, at this point, if there was going to be other interest outside, like it would have happened by now, I tend to think, or Twitter would have maybe found somebody. So I think there's going to be some opportunities for longs. I am long it off 51, scalped it a couple times, but at this particular moment, if that were to break, I think you'd establish maybe like a 50 level as well. Some people might be looking to roll this and just say, hey, I'm going to do better holding on to this to 54 if there's a deal than I would in the market if they think it's a down market, which could provide it a little bit of strength. A lot of times, if you get close to any potential deal price after it's announced, you want to be fading it. We haven't had an announced deal yet. Let's just keep that one in mind. And that NKTX, which I was just telling you was breaking out, that's actually getting pretty interesting. I got to remember that we have these keys, so we can already be doing a wow for this thing. Pop on the watch list here, and Brendan had it in there. NKTX 1350 was the top rate just now. On the daily chart, it's 13.25 that it's also breaking out from. It just took 14 even, so I'm going to have to take some shares out again in front of that. Looks like it's a good start. Market's down, and I'm long 3 stocks. I don't know what's going on.
That's a good way to start. That's how I started last week. But today I'm a little bit more quiet just because I'm not sure if we're going to, like the way of the action I'm getting on the futures, there's a possibility of a bounce. So I am looking for some potential longs here. Given the kind of day we've had for the last couple of days, it's going to be tough to find longs, right? Because they're going to be so far down, setting up negative, whatnot. So I am looking for some longs here. We might get a bounce. So maybe not NKTX for now. It has taken off. Maybe if it comes back down into the mid-13s, I might take a shot on the long side there. And what else we got, Brendan?
There's a couple of things moving here. Starbucks, guys, on looks like a couple of negative moves from analysts to the downside. Shopify as well, if you remember, big mover last week. Also a couple of negative moves there for Shop as well to the downside. I wanted to mention Tesla here, 2.7% in negative territory so far. I mean, the market itself taking care of a lot of that. We're back below 1,000. This is 1,000 from Friday, if you remember. Thursday and Friday ended up being support. But if you remember on Friday, we learned that potentially this deal could involve a certain the deal between Twitter and Elon could involve a certain portion of his own shares in Tesla being involved in the purchase. So there is some negativity on that aspect as well for Tesla today.
Tesla, we were sure 1,000's a big round number, but I think the key number for me was that 970. Because it held well, even the day we had earnings come out, it held well. It's been consolidating through the bottom there, 970 on the back end. And what do we get overnight? We cracked that 970, opened it up a little bit. That's your 8 o'clock dark pool dump right there. So you may actually want to ignore that a little bit. And now if we can get back underneath, it seems to be a little bit of flexibility. I would say 965. Let's move that 970 down to 965. If we were to get back down through there, this Tesla has some downside space. So let's keep an eye on that. It could easily also bounce right here. False move through the 970, get some stops out, and then catch a bid and then run to the upside. That's a possibility as well. So we're just going to keep an eye on that 965. For anyone who wants to get involved, it's going to be right through there. You have a chance for a low risk long if you go for it. But again, at these price points, I stay out, but I'm just going to show you guys that 970 to 965 at this point is going to be an important level for you guys to watch.
Yeah, I agree with you on that Tesla. It's definitely, that's a key level. One of the things when we sat down, we're like, I actually said to Arun, I'm like, is this one of those Monday head fakes, everything's so bad, and then you wipe out stops at the bottom, and then you have a chance for an up day kind of moves. And I was looking for places where you could express that kind of a trade. Tesla stands out because A, they had blowout earnings, B, because as everyone just mentioned, you broke that bottom and you're back above it already. So you've kind of put that wick bottom in. If you were to take back out like 985 on the upside here at the open, you'd be able to put a tight 80 stop if you liked it, or you'd have that bottom end of the range to be able to contend with. So I'm kind of looking for that bullish side. I think there's plenty of things that might give these short opportunities without diving into like Tesla land and pink short land to start the day today. And oh my goodness, NKT now $1 up. This thing's getting close to 15 bucks. I'm very likely to want to take that out at 15. I never hold these low floaters long enough, but it's getting close enough to 15 bucks. It puts that 10% move in the pre-market. I think it's going to be worth it. But Tesla, my first look would be if we can try, like if the market starts to boom up and we get a break of the high, 985, with a quick 90 stop, maybe establish something if I like a long, really, really love a long, get a bit of a dip buy a little bit later on. I just would rather be playing a long side situation. There's nothing confirmed about how many shares he'd have to sell, although that is legitimate. Like it's a significant portion he is raising the money. So where else is it going to come from other than him possibly selling some shares? However, I kind of feel like that could end up being overblown. And given how strong the earnings were, and we've already pulled back 130 bucks from those tops, I'd like to think if the market goes up, Tesla should be okay.
Carvana, one that reported last week, CVNA, price target cut just out on them. So they're down as well with the overall market. I mean, it's weakness right across the board. NKTS, or X, I should say, NKTX, which is Encarta, is 29.5 million on the free float. So not a huge float, but wanted to double check that one. Yeah, it is doing all kinds of volume and moving around here so far. Let's bring in Frank Caberna, Director of Content, Product, and Creative over at the Small Exchange in Chicago to kick off a brand new week here. Frank, great to see you as always. Going to be an interesting one here once again. We've had, a big move in crude oil to start things off back below that key $100 level that we've been discussing over the past couple of weeks. But want to talk about the US dollar to kick things off here. Pretty impressive rally that we've been discussing here going back a month or so now.
Absolutely, Brennan. Yeah, we'll definitely talk some crude as they're well below $100 and definitely going to be interesting at some point. But I do want to throw to US dollar first because the rally is continuing and we just continue to build outlier on outlier going into today. 14 of the last 16 trading days higher in US dollar. You really don't see trends like this. And barring an absolute miracle in foreign exchange, US dollar is going to close higher again today. This is a bit of a wild one here, Brennan. And I know foreign exchange can get a bad rep because it's not as volatile as stocks or commodities and everything else, but we're in true outlier mode here in the US dollar. And if you look at the last couple of years of price action, I have about the last 5 years or so here, we're getting right to those highs we saw in the midst of the pandemic in early 2020 and those highs that we saw at the end of 2016, 2017. The nice thing about this US dollar asset class or foreign exchange at large is very mean reverting. If we can go to the next slide that has a little bit more data and a little bit more of that mean reversion attribute. This is unique to foreign exchange, interest rates, and a couple of other spaces where in the long term, prices don't tend to stray too far from their means. And if they do, they tend to crack back given at least a time frame of a couple of weeks to a couple of months. So I have longer term shorts in this US dollar market here that are obviously getting whacked on Monday morning. But I definitely want to bring this to everyone's attention because like any great streak in basketball or trading, what have you, it does normalize. You see that mean reversion at some point, and we just can't continue on this pace of 15 of it'll be today 15 of the last 17 trading days higher in US dollar. And I wanted to zero in quickly on the different currencies to see if you are interested in the crosses where you can go for potentially the best value, because that US dollar is nice because it's USD against a basket of almost 10 foreign currencies. It's like the S&P 500 of foreign exchange. It gives you the broad strokes of what's going on. But what you can see here is Japanese yen getting absolutely hammered over the last several weeks. Everything was kind of in the mix of when you're looking at yen, euro, pound, Aussie dollar, and Canadian dollar. Everything up until about March was down between 3, 4, 5 to 10% there. Now yen really leading the way lower. Euro also not doing so hot. But if you are looking for a true value play, that yen is getting hit pretty good relative to the other pairs against the USD. But what we're seeing here today, actually, it's the only green one of the bunch. That's why sometimes we go to that value play, even on a day where euro, pound, Aussie, and Canadian dollar lower, yen picking up a little bit. So maybe we'll get even some mean reversion within these different crosses here, Brennan. But I definitely want to keep USD on everybody's board because, yes, crude oil is moving. Yes, stocks are down now for a fourth day in a row, which rarely happens. Interest rates are definitely catching a lot of people's attention, but don't shy away from foreign exchange, especially if you're in there trading options. I like the puts in yen or the short calls in USD. A lot of interesting stuff to do, even though it's not the most volatile asset class.
Yeah, very telling chart there, right across the entire range of pairs, all getting hit on this continued rally. You mentioned interest rates there. Another chart that looks pretty impressive if you go back a couple of months, but we are, as you let us know a little bit last week, but we'll get into it more here. We are getting into an area where we could see a little bit of resistance.
Yeah, and you're actually seeing it this morning as well. I saw some of the price action last night on the open, but I was not thinking it would be this bearish for rates. You've got 2 years down a full 10 basis points this morning, a pretty big move. And this is the resistance that we're talking about, Brendan. They got up towards 3% in both the 2-year, 10-year, and 30-year, very flat yield curve right now. None of them breaking that 3% and all of them backing off pretty much to the same tune, although 2 years are getting hit the hardest. This is really interesting to me, especially that US dollar continues to build on the highs. US dollar, US rates tend to be positively correlated. Now US dollar is just on its own blowing out those highs, probably mostly due to a little bit of a fear bid. Rates now, the question becomes, all right, you couldn't break 3%. Where are you going to land? Where are you going to bounce back from? Because they have a lot of room to run to the downside. And the thing that might be nice for all your stock traders out there, and what I'm leaning on as well as I've got some long tech stocks from the end of last week, and I'm probably going to pick some more up here this morning, is if rates give away a little ground, can that be enough for stocks to bounce back? If we go to my last chart here, you can see the stark inverse correlation between short-term rates and equities. Definitely not digesting the hiking rate environment from the Fed well here. Now, I mean, we're going to open lower on Monday. And like I said, it'll be lower on Wednesday, lower on Thursday and Friday. And now Monday, lower again, 4 days in a row. Hopefully, these rates moving to the downside are enough to jumpstart equities to at least get a bounce back. And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up a stat that I bring up often, Brendan, which is one, if stocks are red on a Monday, the odds that they're green on the Tuesday following are vastly higher than average. Stocks tend to be up, close higher on a given day, Brendan, about 54% of the time. After that red Monday, those odds jump closer to 60%. And then also after multiple days in a row lower in the broad equity market like NASDAQ or S&Ps, Brendan, those odds of a bounce back jump closer to 65, close to 70%. Stocks do not tend to spend more than 2, 3, 4 days in a row lower. So we'll see how this open goes for equities, but I'm definitely looking to pick up some more, either small tech or micro NASDAQ, whatever you're trading on the broad equity index front, not so much the single stocks.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a friendly finish to last week for these tech stocks. But I mean, a very good point, and one that we need to maybe revisit later in the week is that correlation between whether or not we do get that pullback in interest rates and a little bit of a bounce here, because I mean, stocks all right across the board at pretty significant levels of support. So Chinese or possible Chinese demand issues hitting crude oil here this morning, once again going back. I mean, this is probably 3 weeks in a row for that storyline, at least. Back below 100, though, which is significant.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we throw to the platform here, you can see that, yes, we're lower, but we're not really at a point where I'm ready to buy crude. This is going to be a really interesting week. Thankfully, we've got, a full long week ahead of us here. So I'm not rushing to this crude market. But it's a classic, if it ain't broke, don't fix it here, Brennan, in crude. Shorting crude near 108 to 112 has worked beautifully the last several weeks. If this market falls down between 90 and 95, I'm going to try to catch that bounce in this market. Of course, at some point here, it could be this week, it could be next year, crude oil will fall back down to more average prices in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But until that happens, I'm trading this range. Now, this is a big, healthy correction lower in crude, like you say, due to some news stories here. And maybe it is worth the short-term buy, looking at a short-term bounce in this market. But I've not had so much success. I've actually gotten whipsawed a couple of times in these short-term moves here. I'm looking at a little bit longer of a time window, maybe a 2 or 3 day long trade. If we get down below $95 in crude, say, I mean, it could happen the end of today or more likely tomorrow or Wednesday. If it does happen, I'm definitely looking to pick some of that up and trade that higher. The only other thing that I do want to potentially look at here, Brennan, is metals. I don't know if you and your gang have looked at the recent action in gold and silver, but commodities starting to trend together here. Soybeans also lower to start the week here as I load some data in the platform. You'll see big move lower here in the precious metals. This is gold and silver put together. And while crude is still holding in that range, gold and silver are free falling well outside of that range. So I'm actually ready to pick up both some equities and some metals here on Monday morning, because this is a big move lower in metals. I mean, we were just shorting it last week, my friend, covered those for profits, and now I'm looking to get on the other side.
That was I guess 1900 was the level on gold there that got taken out this morning early on. So negativity right across the board. We appreciate the information. Going to be an interesting week here. Frank Caberna is Director of Product Content and Creative at the Small Exchange in Chicago. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Brendan.
Great look there for oil, guys. But interesting on the tech front as well, as we head into, as we said, the biggest week for earnings, whether or not we get that pullback in interest rates that could help some of these back to the upside.
No, certainly. And we're going to talk oil, obviously, because some of the equities are going to be pretty interesting at these levels. My chart doesn't want to load. I guess that thing hasn't changed. But I'm looking at that 100 level for oil as well. But worth keeping in mind, like those tech names, as you mentioned, it's been. I kind of feel like if you get that fake out, there's some opportunities for some long setups. It's not like some of these are pretty tricky given where they're trading. It's easy to want to look at some of those shorts, but when I start to think about if we hold the bottoms today, that you might get one of those like little relief rallies. And remember, in down markets, that's where you get the best types of long and up days, right? Like it can seem counter trend, but you get the bigger percentage move bounces. And that feels like it's a place to hunt for. There's another move that just happened, ARDX, which I was in, that you guys would have saw. It was just long above $1 on this one. It just broke the buck. I told myself, like, one of the things I want to do better this year is these ones where you can defend a buck and you can get a long at 2 and 3, and it's a smaller float name. Even if it just goes back to the high, I like the risk to reward. So it's a trade I haven't been making much, but I just put it on. I'm going to take it out here because it just broke the $1. I'll revisit it maybe a little bit closer to the open. It might set up for a short, but there's a chance it could hold out close enough here that the support at $1 is substantial. But this early with half an hour to go, I'm just going to take the stop out, then move on to the next trade. NKTX is broken through 15 now. Looks like it is headed to that 16 level on the daily.
Yeah, we'll go to Brendan with upgrades and downgrades. I'll update you guys on positions when we come back.
A few big names on this board once again this morning to note. AMD, obviously, semiconductors. There's moves both ways. We'll talk about a cautionary note on the entire group coming up here as well, but AMD, Raymond James to the upside. GPS was nicely positive when I looked at it this morning. A couple of oil names on the upgrade side, which is interesting, given the move. Meta is over here. NVIDIA, Starbucks, and Visa all lower.
All right. In terms of my positions, as you guys can see on the board there, I got two longs here. Veru, shout out to somebody in the chat was pointing out Veru, and I was like, oh, I looked at the chart, and I was like, you know what? That actually looks pretty decent. You look at the daily, you're like, okay, well, the 10 seems to be solid. We kind of backed away, even though the market was ugly on Friday. Veru does not want to stay below 10 on 11 on Friday. 10 still hasn't broken, and then I come in today, and Veru is actually trading stable. I was expecting it to be a little bit lower. We got above this afternoon drift and the afternoon high, which is around 11.25 and change. So you know what, 11.30, 31 in my case is good enough for me. So I am going to go for the long on Veru. As you can see on the 5-minute chart here, that's going to be the action I'm going to play with, that little consolidation break to the upside after having a strong finish at the end of the day, withstanding the market pressure to the downside. So we're going to go long Veru and then Coke. I see Valeria says Coke is better than Pepsi.
Drink.
In terms of drink, I mean, I think water's better than both of them, but I mean, that's my personal opinion. But here goes Coke to the downside, so I'm picking up longs on the downside. I think Coke, the way it's setting up with what I want to do with the market, I do want to get into longs. So at some point later on today, as soon as we cross 42.50 to the upside on the futures, I will let you guys know once I position up on the futures as well, because I will be looking at longs on the futures. So I figured with me wanting to do that on the future side of things and the fact that Coke is actually trading just above this high from Friday, with strength, I'm going to get backing from the futures. Why not go for the long as well? So good trend in the pre-market to the upside. So I'm going to join on board there. I've got 66.54 to the long side on Coke with the 65 stop. So there goes 50 on the futures, and I'm going to see if I can grab some longs. Not here. I'm not going to price them here, but I will try to price them a little bit lower and maybe get a slight move to the downside, which I can go long on.
I actually like the long in front of 65 on Coke as well. On earnings, I kind of always want to put a stink bid in. So I'm more of a stink bidder on that stock. The NKTX, by the way, just a quick update. I know we definitely want to get into both what is moving, and I want to hear your thoughts on the futures because I've missed that a little bit there, Arun. But that 16 level, I threw it out there, but I do want to pull up the chart just so you guys can see. On the daily, this is the last level of consolidation, significant consolidation where you had support turn into resistance. It was just above 16 bucks. It looks like it's starting to turn here. It got through 50s. It's trying to hold a bid. I'm going to be getting out in front of the 16 level. Again, some of these low floaters, maybe they want to go, maybe they don't. But I'm going to take the profit and run here. I mean, the 13.50 break was a good break. It was a breakout on the daily as well. But it feels like making this test to 16 is going to work. And if you weren't watching at the very beginning, that one is free to short for us at Day Trade the World. And a lot of times that can make it a crowded short trade. So got to be very, very careful shorting a stock like that. AMD was on there for the upgrades. You saw the downgrade was in NVIDIA. I like look, AMD for the long, it's up 1% here today, and we're going to get into some of these chip names, but it's actually trying to break out from what would have been Friday afternoon's resistance, earlier support for the couple of days before that, and that's at about 89.25. So this is actually setting up pretty decently. The futures get taken out. You work this one in front of the low here, about $1.50, and there's $10 of room to about 98, and that's maybe 95 is a more significant level, but there's still room, $10 up there to 98.
GM, General Motors, popping up on this note from CNBC, guys. So apparently by next year, you'll be able to buy an electric Corvette, which is a huge development for them. So nice little pop there for GM back to 40, which was, still down on the day, obviously. A little bit of support on Friday for GM in that area. I noticed Ford was doing a lot of volume this morning as well. Also in negative territory ahead of the open here. Let's get a look at the overall market. Maybe Arun, check out the futures for today. I mean, we're back to, as we said with Frank there, significant levels to say the least.
Morning, I was like, we were getting to, I actually checked my books. I had a level I thought it didn't have a level below 4,300 all the way down to 41 and change. I actually had a level marked at 42.20 from a while ago. So I checked my books and I was like, you know what, that's actually there. We flexed underneath it a couple times and we're catching a bid here. That's why I'm a little bit more confident with the long, because of the fact that I still have this level here. It just wasn't on my charts here in the office. So here we are working a bounce off of this 42.20 to the downside. We're getting it back above this 42.50. As long as we can stay strong, there's the 9 o'clock close. That closes out a bunch of different time frames. But again, I want to see what this market does on a pullback south of 42.50. I am going to wait for a long, but I am positioning up into equities. I do think there's a possibility that we get a nice little bounce here. You take the chance, right? After 2 days of being down this much and the market's finally finding some stability, you got to take the shot on the buy side. If you're wrong, you're wrong, but you got to take the hit. You got to take the hit and just move on from that. But I do think there's a possibility for a long. I will let you guys know once I position up in them, and it's going to be somewhere around 50, possibly into the mid 40s as well. But the stop on this is going to be south of the lows, right? So the low, I believe, is 1850, 42, 1850. So we may have to flex this down a little bit to maybe 42.15 or so to the downside. So we'll see if we can't position up a long, wait for some confirmation. To the upside, what do we have for resistance? That level should not be here. What do we have for resistance? We have 42.85. That's going to be your first look of resistance there. And then the second look is going to be all the way up at 44.15. So that's all the way back here. That's not going to, I mean, if that comes into play, it's going to be one hell of a day. But still, for now, as long as we can get some bounce action right through these 40s, we can take a look at that 42.85. Once we clear that, we have upside potential all the way to 4,300. So that's going to be the initial look I'm going to go for. While I'm doing that, while I'm talking about this, that's all I'm going to talk about for futures. There's a question in the chat that I actually want to address here. I think that's a very good question. Ty asking what happens if the bid's higher than the ask. Odds are you're probably looking at a book like this. It's probably because the NYBs, that would be considered a lock market. They've gone ahead and kind of gotten through the market adjustments and market rules have changed a little bit. So you can't really lock a market anymore with certain ECNs. So the reason why it's probably higher than the ask is because it's probably an NYB quote, which is a New York book quote, which isn't executed until 9:30. So right now, until the market officially opens, all these NYBs don't really matter. Essentially, you got to look at the ARBs and the NSBs and whatnot. So all these NYBs, they'll be executed and they'll be handled out with the opening print, which goes into why do we care about imbalances, right? So we'll pull these imbalances out. What do we got for the imbalances on the open? We've got RIG, an oil stock up, well, not up, but 1.35 million shares to the sell side. That's going to be your largest. So 1.35 to the sell side. That will be executed at the open. If you're seeing NYBs cross, you're probably going to see bids cross lower than the ask and bids higher than the ask and offers lower than the bid. That's probably because it's an NYB. That is not probably. It is because it's an NYB quote you're seeing. So just ignore all the NYBs, look at the ARBs and all the other ECNs that are actually trading right now, because keep in mind, the official books aren't open just yet. This is pre-market. So NYB is not open just yet. Same thing applies on the NASDAQ side.
Open. That's the link to the watch list. Make sure you grab the watch list every single morning. We send it out before we come on at 8:30. Twitter on the imbalance locator. There we saw with a decent sized bid as well, 500,000+ on the buy side, following multiple reports this morning suggesting, yeah, this deal with Elon could get done as soon as today at 54.20. So 420 plus a 5 at the beginning.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, like we've talked about Twitter a few times here, but it's worth going over again that 54.20. There's no final deal yet, but let's make it like I'm not saying assume that the deal is going to happen, but at this point, it's looking pretty positive. And if you get 54.20, it's not some given that the stock is going to just jump and start trading at $54. I think it's far more likely that you could crack the 52 and get at least a little bit closer, maybe to that recent high. Like if you were to get to like 53, I think that would be pretty good for today. And it doesn't mean that there can't be a long. It's just temper your expectations. There's no higher bid here. This is a potential cash offer that we're going to see. So it's going to fall into those rules, and it might not be as exciting a trade. Right now, I think there's a scalp trade off 51 that makes sense. There's 100,000 on the New York book at 51.22. That's been sitting there since before we came on the show. So, somebody's buying some shares up at that price. It's held it a couple of times already here in this nice consolidation. So it'll be great. I mean, I got the long in front of it. It'd be great if we can take out this top. I'd definitely be covering some in front of the high and looking to get all out in front of 53 because I think that'd be a gift. I think if you get close to 53, you're talking about a gift, let alone a break of this 52 level. Just, there's going to be ear to the ground, listen to Brendan, make sure you're catching any headline because anything comes through that this is getting close to getting accepted, and that's where the breakout's gonna come. So it makes shorting it very, very, very tricky unless it is close to that 54 price, which I would tend to think I can't see any way that if we saw that price, I wouldn't be shorting in front of it. That just almost goes without saying at this point.
Yeah, not touching this. If you guys remember, every time we brought Twitter up, I kept saying headline risk, no thank you. Nothing has changed. If we were trading lower in the 40s, the risk reward is a little bit better. But if we're trading at 50 and you're going to price the quote or the 54.20 quote, it could even come into 55 or 56. Just so your upside, let's just say the bid is now not 54.20, but the bid is now $56 or something. Upside is $5. Downside of any sort of negative news opens the door all the way back down to the mid 40s. Do I want to take that shot to make the $5? Because odds are we going to have a second buyer or bid come in for Twitter after this, whatever the bid price that they negotiate here with Elon Musk. So I'm going to say headline risk once again. I don't think it's worth it for an intraday day trade. If you're willing to take the shot as an investment piece and say, you know what, this deal's getting done, we're going to take it. It's a free $5, go for it. But in terms of trading, I worry always about the headline risk. I mean, I'll take my shots when I need to, but at the same time, I'm always going to be risk conscious that I'm not wasting money for the sake. It's got to be worth it. And do I think $5 upside or $4 upside is worth it given how it's moving around? If you're doing scalp pieces, yeah, maybe 52 break to the upside, scalp piece all the way up, you get a quick buck and a half, and then you kind of just work your way out of it. That's a feasible opportunity on Twitter, to take that type of strategy. But for me, for the way I trade, I definitely can't get involved in Twitter.
All right, let's go on to crude oil here, down this morning, as we mentioned with Frank there, Actually, no, now it's 5%, 4.94% currently for crude oil. So individual oil stocks, my point here, faring a little bit better. 3.8 here for Oxy. I mean, they all kind of look like this or thereabouts. $55 significant on a daily chart for Oxy, but this is a significant move, guys, as we said, for crude oil.
About the only thing that kept me from being short Oxy in front of 55 right now is every time I've traded Oxy in the last 2 months, it's been better to sort of catch the opening move and get yourself a little bit better of a price if you can. B, the 50 period does loom at 53.5. There's a chance it finds support above that. All that said, when you pull up, I mean, you can look at the daily, you can look at the 15 minute to get a better look at what that 55 looks like to me. If we're below $100 a barrel and we're looking weak, Oxy below that shelf makes some sense. It's just a really, really tight stop to have 55 stop if you were to put the trade on right now, and the volume isn't exactly tremendous. So, I'm going to look to see if there isn't a chance to trap any longs in a 55 break and then maybe catch the short that way. I don't want it to get away from me, though. If it takes out the bottom at 54, I might take a starter position just to make sure that we don't miss out on it. There's definitely room if we get past the 50 period, and it's been so strong for so long. When you get levels like this to break the trend into the downside, a lot of times it's just one of those, okay, well, you put that trade on because it's there, and I see that 55 level, and I can't really ignore it. But just keep in mind, 53, it's about 53.30, 53.40 on that 50 period. If you catch a bounce off that level, then there might only be about $1 worth it on the trade, so you want to make sure you get yourself a good entry price. That's why I don't want to be in it just right now. I want to see if I can get something a little bit tighter to that 55 level, especially sort of shorting a pop at the open.
Well, anytime we talk crude, I'm going right to the crude source, which is going to be the crude futures contract. And this goes back to when Neil was covering for Brendan, and we were talking about crude down here at 92, 92.5, 94-ish. We were trading around. I was like, it's in a box. As long as it stays between 92 and 110, it's going to be a range trade. So you can work it south of 95, potential low risk, high reward situation where you catch a bid, you catch a nice little long, you see if it can get back to the top end of the range. And I've been saying this the entire time inside the range. that once it enters that 105 area, you start looking for shorts maybe to play against the other side of the range. And what does crude do? It falls right off. 109.81 is the high, 110 is going to be the top end of the range, and then there's your short opportunity in between 110 and 108 or so. And then here we are back to the downside. Would I touch crude right now? No, there's space to the downside. It's trading 96.90 even, down 5% on the day, and we've still got another $1 or $2 before we start hitting buy-side support levels. So this thing can still continue down and not be ready for a buy just yet. So I keep an eye on crude. It's still inside this little channel here. Respect it. Be aware that the upside and downside is going to be limited as long as we stay in the channel. And once we get going through the channel, even if we break through the 92, I'd be a little bit careful just because of how these 90s have been holding well. But at the same time, once we get through that channel, I can start actively looking, hey, you know what? Maybe we broke the channel. Maybe there's more of a break to the downside on crude. But for the time being, it's respecting the movement through here, 92 on the downside, 110 on the upside. Trade accordingly if you're trying to step into anything related to crude at this point.
All right, we saw the upgrade there for AMD on the board this morning. So positivity for AMD specifically. However, there were a couple of kind of cautionary notes out this morning from analysts on the entire space, suggesting lower prices could be coming and that supply chain issues are in the process of being resolved. So if you have a look at NVIDIA, 1.4 to the downside versus that positive look for AMD right now. But worth a note here because, and I simply bring this up, look at the past 2 days. NVIDIA, I mean this entire group, among the leaders to the downside. Look at the volume as well that came in on Friday on the sell side, guys.
That's one of those things. Like, and again, I know we just talked about AMD, and it makes sense to actually jump to NVIDIA after making that look. A lot of times you make the bottoms on that huge volume spike. It's so far down, and you've had so many bad days in a row. You're looking, is there a bit of a bounce? Well, the last time there was a bounce like this, you don't have to look very far. You're just going back to the middle of this month. And it wasn't a huge bounce. It did come off like this 210 area and get back to 213, but it wasn't exactly a jailbreak. Let's put it that way. I do prefer the setup on AMD. Currently looking at that right now, it's like a triple top there at about 89.25. It also has support down there at like that 88 level. But if you take NVIDIA, we caught the downgrade, 195 on a break is about the same type of thing if you are to look at it. And then that 190 support, when I looked at it on the daily chart, I didn't like it quite as much. I just found that the consolidation looked a little bit stronger on AMD, but there's no discounting. That 190 double bottom in NVIDIA is certainly here. You're just sort of treading water in the middle of the level. I like AMD a little bit better here today, but every single argument that can be made for AMD putting in a bottom, you can look at NVIDIA and say most of the same things. Again, the difference is AMD strong this morning and caught an upgrade. NVIDIA is weak this morning, caught a downgrade. That's the only reason I'm looking for the break in AMD right now. But man, the more I look at the chart, the more I'm going to be talking myself into just being long in front of 190 and say, well, if it doesn't break, then there's so much room to come back into the upside, and the risk to reward. And this is why counter trend trading sometimes is so appealing. The risk to reward ends up better when you get down to these key levels.
And talk about key levels, Marvell. Marvell broke down through the bottom end. It took out multi-month actually, going back to February. We were working against these 60s, and we finally got underneath 60 in a stable fashion way. On Friday, we tried to make a bounce. We finally took out that low from March the 14th, which was actually 58.84, closed down below. And now what I'm watching out for is if these chips are going to catch a bid, what happens to Marvell? If Marvell can get back above the 60 half area, this could just easily be a false break through the bottom, which opens up the upside on Marvell for a long, and that's exactly what I want, a false move through the bottom that snaps back up, because that'll open up the 64, 65 area. Nice risk-reward ratio there. Because I'm looking at a lot of these other names, like you look at AMD and NVIDIA and all these names, they're so far away from any sort of feasible levels that I can work with for some sort of setup trade like that, but Marvell setting up nicely. The other one I did work with in the last couple of days is Micron. So Micron's a possibility as well, but Micron is a little different though, just because the ranges are a little bit wider. Micron trading at 68 and change, so it's trading right here. So for it to turn into a bounce off the bottom, it's going to have to clear that 71, which is still $3 away. So that's why I'm going after Marvell. I think Marvell has a much better chance of taking a snapback move, false break through the bottom, snapback up top. So we're going to keep an eye on Marvell. I've got the alert out. You can see this little arrow on the side here. That's the alert letting me know that if it ever gets above that marker 70.5, we're going to go ahead and try to get along. On the flip side, futures, guys, I have bids out. I am trying to get some longs here, see if we can grab some off the opening move and maybe start building a position around these 50s, even the mid 40s, all the way down and into that 15 area that I mentioned off the beginning.
Hey guys, go long on the like button in pre-market. Just around 15 minutes left until the open. And please make sure you like this video and help us get that 1K likes. Now let's go back to Brendan.
All right, let's continue along here. Apple up next was down below 160. 160, a huge level for Apple on the daily chart here, but we're trying to get back to the upside, trying to get back to where we ended the day, in fact, on Friday for Apple. JP Morgan cutting their price target on Apple, talking about lower iPhone unit sales in this current quarter for the company that are tracking well below industry estimates, apparently, for Apple this quarter. So not good here. Ahead of earnings, guys, coming up this week.
Yeah, we got big earnings coming this week, and in the chat, I'm pretty sure, and we're going to confirm this in a second. Someone had mentioned, as we talked about AMD, they said the earnings were today. I don't believe so. I think they're next week. The 3rd is what I believe AMD earnings are as well. We will double check that. But Apple, you get Apple this week, and you get the big names, a lot of big names in the next couple of weeks here. It's held that 200 period, and one of the last names to be able to do so, bouncing now off 159 most recently this morning off the 200 period moving average, and that's about it. Like, that's the level I'm looking. It'd be like, if you like a 160 long, I think your outs if the 200 period gets broken. I think that gets pretty simple. If this gives up the ghost, that's going to be a big market leader. So if Apple cannot hold 159 and we start trading below that after earnings, I think that's going to be a pretty weak sign for the overall market. I think that goes without saying. That's not really going out on too much of a limb. But for today's trade alone, it's a 200 period moving average that I'm looking at 159. I think I just want to be long in front of it. If you look at the way that it's come down, it's had consolidations after each one of its big stages down. Like, buyers are coming in to this name when there's a chance. Could it be different because of earnings and the risks that's associated with it? Everyone can probably still remember Netflix. Heck, man, I was sitting at home not feeling well, and even I felt the Netflix thing when it came to the downside. Like, an aura around the market just sort of like hits you like Obi-Wan. When Alderaan gets blown up, it's like there's a disturbance in the force, and it was Netflix down 35%. Apple's not Netflix, but in the back of people's minds, maybe they want a little bit of risk off there. So watch out for that 159. If it does break, I think there's some serious trouble for not just Apple, but for the market as well. And Brendan has confirmed it's the 3rd for AMD, so that is next week.
Yeah, Apple's...
Go ahead, sorry.
All right, no, I was just going to say Apple, I would love to be a part of, especially when I'm thinking long on the index. I'm thinking, hey, Apple, biggest weight in these indexes, see if I can get a long, but the Apple chart doesn't, lend itself to a long right now. This is the daily as of Friday, and right now it's trading at 161, so which puts you a little bit lower than where we closed. But again, there's no support nearby. So although I want to go long on these futures, I don't know if I can get it from Apple. Apple could still rally, but ignoring this entire chart, the way it's moving, Apple could still rally, but it's just like looking at this chart, where can I potentially catch a bid is the problem on Apple. That's why I'm kind of ignoring Apple. I'm looking at other names, and then we're going to see if we can actually just go right to the source and grab some futures contracts as well.
Just having a look at Coke again. Yeah, it's interesting on AMD, guys. We'll have more big names next week as well on the earnings front. Just having a look at Coke, just to go back over this report again there. Unit sales, the Coke unit sales, higher than expected for this current quarter, and the forecast looking better than expected, in fact, as well. So we were actually down going into the report for Coke, but lifts this thing right back above 66.
Yeah, well, oddly enough, like I have a stink bid in, and most of it has to do with if it's post earnings and it's low volume. I tend to like to think that you can get yourself a good price, and I'm sort of agreeing with Arun that what was 60, if you look at 65 here, it's just gone sort of back and forth off of this level going into this report. You get the Friday afternoon support, and then you just want to trade above that level. Unit sales, fantastic. I'm a Pepsi guy, not Coke when it comes to the company, but Coke's been performing so well, it's hard to ignore it. You can say the Pepsi, I like the overall business because it's very, very different from Coke's, but Coke has performed much better. And I think that's going to fit better in the next couple of years than a lot of the other consumer names out there. So kudos to them. I think it's a good company to be in. Obviously, I just don't love 300,000 pre-market volume, and I'm not really even seeing any prints as we speak. So if there's any kind of a drop, you got 67 as a high, so you can always maybe reverse off that. I just want to be long tighter that 65 when it comes to Coke. And watch out for that NKTX. I had a chance to take it all out in front of 16. I decided to let it ride, but I do not want this thing sort of reclaiming that $12.50 level, the $13 level. We get back below that, it doesn't make any sense to just hold this $1 against. It's been a good runner, but the rug can get pulled on these low floaters as quickly as they go up. They can come down on you.
All right, well, I explained my Coke read earlier. It's going to be the same thing. It's going to be the fact that we close on Friday, so far deep. There was that little gap there. You guys can see it, right? It goes from February the 14th to about the 19th, it looks like. And there was a little gap there. We closed right into that gap, and then you get overnight movement that moves it right back through that area. And then if we end up taking up the highs, there are highs from Friday, which we did, which is around 66.35, you would think, hey, you know what? At this point, this could be a great long because it's a complete reversal and a bounce off that gap overnight. Yeah, that's what you get. You get that overnight action down to the 65s and then a quick bounce pretty much in the pre-market starting at 7 o'clock. Here we go, strong trend to the upside. So that's why I'm going for the long. I just think that it opens a door. When you get a move like that off a bounce level like the 65 area, and you're able to take out the previous day's highs, it opens the door towards that 67 area. So I'm gonna put up the $1.15 risk, see if I can't make at least $1.50 before we get the breakout, at which point, then it's just more than 1-to-1, right? 1-to-1 is just to get yourself, hey, does the risk make sense for the reward? At this point, if you get it, you're gonna actually expand the possibility of a great run to the upside north of 67. So that's why we're going for it. And Coke has a strong trend. Look at this trend from mid-March down here at 58. We've just been chugging along in the daily, just going straight up to the upside. At some point, this does have to break. And when it breaks, it's going to be ugly. But at the same time, this was the opportunity to break it, and they refused to do it overnight. So I think there's a possibility to the long. I'll put my money where my mouth is. We're going to take the long and see if we can get that run to the upside.
Something that very rarely happens is happening, guys, and that is we have some extra time. So let's do one extra one, because why not? Bed Bath & Beyond, an interesting look on Friday afternoon. If you remember, there was a Wall Street Journal report that came out suggesting not one, but multiple bids for the company. Once again, if you go to the daily chart, this was the last time that happened, remember? Multiple bids for the company had been rejected by Bed Bath & Beyond, so we had that huge spike. Nothing really, mounted from that. There's no other news this morning, but one to put in your back pocket and kind of keep on watch today.
Yeah, like anytime a name with the short float that it has, wants to give you a consolidation, the breakout can give you 10% pretty easily on something like this. There's not a lot of pre-market volume, under 100,000, so that's pretty low, but I always lean towards that short interest. I don't really know, I don't know anything about Buy Buy Baby, the business, but it's been something that's been considered a target, certainly for them to be able to sell off and then maybe clean up their balance sheet a little bit by getting those proceeds. So maybe a deal does happen. I know that's something that Cohen talked about when he became an activist in the company. So it seems like a pretty decent catalyst. There is headline risk there, but I think the headline risk is more along the lens of you actually get a bid, and then they were able to sell and spin off Buy Buy Baby. And if that were to happen, I think you can definitely clear back to this 18. I just think you need volume to come in. This is more of a set and alert if it breaks $17 or you get a big volume spike than sit in this trade hoping to catch lightning in a bottle, guys. But it's going to be on my watch for today. I'm going to get to Twitter in just a quick second because, like I said, and I know Arun, for a lot of reasons, it's like the headline risk in this one sometimes not worth it unless you're doing a scalp trade. And I typed NQ. And that's what we're trying to work with here, seeing if we can get it back up to that 12. But if we take out 51, then I want to play off the 50 level. These are going to be scalp trades because you have that limited upside, right? Like I don't see it trading above 54. And even if it gets close to the 53 level, likely to have a lot of people wanting to take those profits in advance and not hold out. And that's if there's a deal announced. I know everyone's saying it's pretty close, but we haven't had an official announcement yet of any deal coming through. It looks like it would be at that take it or leave at 54.20 price, so we can be anchored to that pretty confidently.
Yeah. Couple updates I'm going to do. I don't even want to get into Bed Bath & Beyond because it's a scalper's game, and the way it's been moving, there hasn't been really that much to work with. So this is the chart you're dealing with. Like, what do I even do with this if I'm trying to position trade? Like, do I trade against the 16s? And we've broken the 16s before too. So I'm not going to step into this at all. But I do want to say one thing about a couple positions that I am going to step into. Boeing, I'm trying to get my hands on some longs on Boeing north of 175. And also at the same time, I'm trying to get my hands on Netflix, big mover, right? We talked about Netflix and its crazy movement last week, but Netflix is now finding, it looks like it's finding somewhat of a stable bounce. Maybe that north of that, what do I got? Mid 214s is what I'm bidding here. See if we can't work a bounce back into this 225, 226 area, which has been a problem. So top end of this level is going to be right here on around this 230 area. That's going to be, that needs to be broken for this to actually break out and turn into a good breakout trade to the upside. It's going to have to take out that 230. But for the time being, we're going to see if we can catch some bids around this mid 214s. And quick update, I've also picked up some of my position here on the futures here. It doesn't show here. Why does it show here? I probably don't have it set. There you go. Show the fills. There you guys go. There's some of it. I haven't gotten everything I want, but I have picked up some of it. So we'll start building this. As long as we can get a bid here going into the open, we'll pick up the rest after the open. Brendan.
All right, a few little ones bottom end of the list this morning, including this one, ERYP. Note the volume already today compared to what this thing usually does, which is barely trades. Look at the action on Friday, or lack thereof. So we're into this consolidation on the daily chart. So 220, and then 250, 220, 250. Lots of significant areas coming into play for ERYP, guys.
Just reminded me because I think that one traded so little that we actually have to get it unblocked, hopefully. So that'll be an interesting one there for the open. I just wanted to quickly, maybe if I could, I wanted to talk about PayPal very quickly. It's another consolidation type of play. It's flat on the session, but it's right at this 86 level. And if you're looking for things that have made significant bottoms that could have a bit of a jailbreak, PayPal's on my radar.
PayPal. Oh, yeah. So alerts, like we don't have a ton of positions. We don't have a ton of, well, not positions. Typically, we have a bunch of names to go with, but it seems like because of the way we move the rounds, it's going to be a little tough to pick up a bunch of names, especially in the direction that I want to go. As you can see on the board here, I've got 3 longs and a futures position, somewhat of a futures position to the buy side as well. So, you guys notice, I decided to put the bull there because that's my read. Obviously, if I'm wrong, I'm gonna, it's not gonna be a fun time. But we've got 4 longs now. We've picked up Boeing, we've picked up KO, Coke earlier, Netflix as well, and then Veru on the buy side as well. Let's take a quick look at these imbalances, see what we've got going on. Is it just RIG or is there another one now? RIG is still there, sell side 1.4. It's getting bigger and bigger. NAT, it shows up. I don't even know what NAT is. What is NAT? I don't even know this name. I don't even trade this name. It's a Nordic American Tankers. Okay, this sounds like shipping. NAT is there, 826 to sell. And then there goes Twitter, 669 to buy, 400,000 paired. So total is about 1 million shares on the opening print at the moment. And we're still getting going. And then the largest NASDAQ one I see is going to be BRQS at 263 to the buy side, which is somewhat small. It's not much at all. And then Coke is there as well. Coke, where's Coke? Right, it's moving around, but Coke is there, buy side 350 to the buy side. So here we are waiting on some of these positions to get going. Futures coming off a little bit. Okay, I can withstand this. We'll see how far down we go because, again, like I said, I'm starting the position. I'm not getting it all now. I'm starting the position. So we started in the mid-40s. We'll see how much further we got to go before we catch the rest of it. For the time being, we've got some mid-40s going. We've got Boeing, Coke, Netflix, Veru, all to the buy side with the futures position. So I'm starting the day with 5 longs. If that doesn't go to show what I think of the day, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and if this goes badly, then I'm going to have to close my mouth because I'm not going to have any money left.
Well, what's the worst that could happen? It's going to be a roller coaster ride regardless. But hey, man, I'm with you. AMD just broke, by the way, that 89.25. So I got slipped, not a little bit, but 20 pennies. Up to 45 on a quarter break. So that's the pre-market for you. Right now, 15-cent spread even. I just got some out in front of 90, so already starting to work to the upside. There is going to be that AMD. Quickly, with just under a minute to go to the open, I know we're going to have Ms. V on the bell. Hopefully, still have Tony there. I was also looking at PayPal to see if it could take out that 86. It's not quite there yet, but some of these longs starting to come into play rather quickly. Remember, the market is down, but it was just so incredibly weak. It's hard to get away from some of these types of plays when you catch these bottoms. And one last one for you, because I don't know that we looked at Meta. Come on, sock flip. I don't know that we looked at Meta. 183.25, big level for Facebook as well. This one does feel like if I have to roll into something that's a short at the open and we get a pop and fade, if this doesn't take 183.25, I do like that one for a bit of a rollover. Miss V is on the bell. She's got some green on, so the longs hopefully helped out by Miss V. It's Monday. Let's get this party started in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. What up, Victor?
What do we got? Market does not want to go up.
Oh, come on.
Not yet, anyways. Okay.
They hate the
Coming
bell.
down.
That's what it is.
Yeah, they're coming down a little bit, but hey, we just got started. The day just got started. How's Coke doing? Coke opening up at 67. Okay, there you go. There you go, Coke up 28 cents already. We're just waiting on Netflix to get going to the upside and Boeing to turn around. Before now, Coke is up 26 cents. Veru up flat. Futures coming off a little bit. This might give me an opportunity to get some bids in, but for the time being, we're just going to pull back a little bit, see if we can get a bid actually off these 40s as well.
Well, it didn't take long, so that chart's already screwing up. I'm going to go to AMD quickly. It just got to that 90 once again and is now broken through, so let's go, AMD. I'm looking to see if we can get next out in front of 90.5. That's this level here from Friday, lower high. Hopefully we'll take this out right now. Gimme. Always gets. Why would I sit? There we go. Actually just got that fill. So continuing to head upwards on AMD. We did take the stop on Twitter at 51. That is going to be a scalp trade all the way, as this chart does not want to cooperate. I did want to make sure that we didn't ignore oil. It was Oxy that I was looking at, and that's still AMD. Oxy that I was looking at for the pop and fade, and as usual, should have just shorted it right where it was instead of waiting for the better price. Oxy already down $1.
Yeah, market's coming off a little bit here. I'm working with such a wide range that it really, like, a move like this doesn't really bug me too much. It's just, where do I get the next bid? Remember, I picked up some in the mid 40s. I'm looking for the next bid at this point. So the other positions that I've got here, doing well. I mean, our long on Coke is up 20 cents. Netflix is up $1. Veru's down 14 cents. Boeing is actually not having a fun time here, but Boeing, okay, it could be an opening. Let's take a quick look at what the Boeing bid looks like. Am I out $1? Okay, it is actually falling off a little bit. So Boeing's going to be an issue, but the other one's doing just fine here with Coke and Netflix doing strong. Veru, and the Netflix is going to be the big one because of where it's sitting. If we can actually get a bid going here, market doesn't want to give you the bid, by the way, so to the downside we go. But if Netflix can actually catch a bid and get going to the upside, we actually have a decent amount of space. So that's what we're going to be relying on as we move to the upside, and this market continues its trend to the downside. So maybe not average, but I mean, that's why I only took a portion, right? I am thinking of grabbing some more. I just don't know where to do it just yet. Not going to rush my entries on the second one, but we are going to figure out where to get longs because we want some more longs. I want to pick up some more longs. So if you have names that are actually sitting around support areas that I can pick up longs in, I would just put them in the chat. I'll take a look.
Well, I'll tell you one that might be it right now. I'm going to hit a backflip for it, even though the initial trade was going to be the loser. That 183.25 for a potential breakout on Facebook. There was the rollover short. It then immediately took out that level. You'll see it a bit better on the 15-minute chart here, but you immediately took out that 183.25, and now even that's going to the upside. So it's the longs that are strong, despite the fact the market's coming off. There were so many long setups for breakout that leads. Brendo?
A little one moving here, guys. Sunshine Biopharma, SBFM on the NASDAQ, just took out pre-market highs here. They got a patent, it looks like, for an mRNA treatment for cancer, which is obviously very positive. So nice move here for Sunshine Biopharma.
Sunshine, as in maybe even the quarterback. And You guys are going to be like, who is the quarterback at Sunshine? If you watch and remember the Titans, you know what I'm talking about. But the NKTX was the other one. I just got out of that, so at 16. So good timing. It just reversed hard $1 coming back in here. So you see that double top there? 16 was level on the daily chart. That is a wick off top if I've ever seen it. I'm not short it right now, but if we cannot break that high, this one could start to come off a little bit. Facebook, the jailbreak's on now for that. It just got up to 184.40 as well. So, it's one of those, I did want to try it for the short side of the trade, but 183.25 was the level on the daily, and once it took out that level, you had to fight for the long side of the trade. It's AMD, Facebook, both of them now running to the upside. The one that didn't work out, of course, is going to be Twitter. That was always more of a scalp trade. I'm not rolling into a short on Twitter. I would just see if I can't defend 50 in terms of a long. But now that SBFM, a little easier to jump in, and of course, another chart has crashed on me. SBFM is going to be one that's going to be on the watch for me. NKTX, I will short it in front of 16, but there's no getting stubborn about it. It makes a new high. I would get out of that.
Yeah, future's still coming down. God, wow, okay. Okay, good thing we only have some of this. We haven't gotten everything as the market still decides to double top here around these 50s and fall off to the downside as long as we don't take out that low. Well, even below the low, actually, I've got a few points in flexibility below the low. So as long as we don't take out that and continue to the downside, this trade should be okay. Netflix now up as it's finding a base. If we can just get going on Netflix north of that 15 area, if it can actually break through that 15 area and actually accelerate, here we go, Netflix. Now we're starting to move as we move towards that 216 and change. Remember, we've got mid 214s on the long side as the futures finally catches the bid. Okay, more of this, and I can actually figure out where I can get the rest of my longs on the futures. But for now, we've got longs there. Netflix to the upside. It's $1.50 in the money. We've got Veru up 30 cents. We've got Coke up 10 cents. Boeing coming back in. Boeing's been having a problem since the open. At some point, they've got to catch a bid. Remember, I'm looking at the Boeing daily and going, there's a good chance that we. I would hope so. We have a really good chance. If we're going to do a long, if the market decides to take a turn finally, this has got to be the location on Boeing. That's why I'm okay with the long at these prices. But we just need to get going because Boeing is actually catching a sell side action. Even as this market takes off to the upside, there goes Netflix. Come on, Netflix. Through that 216 and change to the upside we go. As the market finally catches a bid, this is what we're looking forward to. But Boeing, damn it. So a couple other names. Facebook, that 184, I was actually looking, as Neil was talking about, I was looking at that 184 as well, but Facebook, man, it's moving fast.
Yeah, it's moving quick.
It is at 186 now, so I'm not going to chase it to 185 and change, so we're going to back off on Facebook. Caterpillar's an option north of 212. So what I'm trying to do right now is, although I have 4 positions in the equity side, because I've got a futures position that I want to continue building, I'm not going to be aggressive chasing into the equity side of positions, right? I'm not going to continue adding because, yeah, I'm not going to continue adding it just because the amount of risk that's going to be required on the future side. So I'm kind of managing my risk a little bit here. I've got 4. Okay. I can probably take another 2 or 3, but I want to add my futures position more. Remember, I've been telling you this entire time, I want to build in through these levels. So as long as we can catch a bid and stay stable in these 40s, I want to keep building. So that's what I'm prioritizing first. I'll leave the 4 to go. I'll point out the names that come out on alerts for you guys. Visa is an option north of 208 as well, I believe. So if we can get going to the upside on those names, you can potentially go for them, but I'm going to sit back a little bit and see if I can build my futures position.
And like Tony G says in online poker, Facebook is gone. Yeah, on your bike, Facebook, it's gone. But I did chase something. It's not necessarily a chase, but it's getting added late, and that was PayPal at that 86. It did just break when everything else was already running, but starting to come into play here. It just went green as well, so it's a bit of a late entrant for me in terms of timing, because you've already seen everything else sort of run. But I'm looking at 87 for the first out, and then all the way up to $90. And that's not even that big of a move in there for PayPal if it can get there. Facebook, on the other hand, like that's really starting to go. It gets through 187, and there's a lot of reason to think you can get a 190 print on Facebook. I don't mean to ignore Tesla at all, and certainly it did give you that move. I think you were talking about that 969 area, Arun, and it gave you a little bit of a dip at that 975. It wasn't quite close enough, but I definitely missed a chance to buy that dip. That might have come and gone on Tesla. That's one that I won't chase. I'm not chasing Tesla, Brendo.
First sign of life for some tech stocks, guys. ARK having a nice day, or start to the day anyways, 2.2. for ARC. Just popped up on a volume scanner back to the upside.
All right, we've got Netflix working these 216s. It doesn't want to separate from the 216 area, but at the same time, I'm not exactly ready to get out of Netflix. Remember, the risk we're putting was, when we got into the long, was $4.50 through the 210 low. So as long as we get to the upside, we got to let it go. Futures coming back in. Now my futures position is flat. Remember, we were out 15 points as the market was running down through the 30 area. We were long in the mid 40s, and then it was coming back in. Market's coming back off a little bit here from the mid 40s. But again, as long as Netflix can get going to the upside. Now, they backed off these 216s, but there's a good chance with the market activity we're seeing, as long as we can get some action. We just need action. It's a little quiet. For 2 days of straight selling, this opening move is somewhat quiet. I do think there's an opportunity at some point later on. Maybe we get some acceleration. Before the time being, it does look a little, or does feel a little quiet here. So as long as Netflix can get going north of these 217s, it seems like. Action level, the issue is the area that I'm going to have to worry about, it seems like, on Netflix is going to be right here. It's going to be 217 through 218, given what we're seeing in terms of overnight action and the closing session on Friday here as the futures coming back in. Okay, there's something going on. I gotta figure out what to do with this as the market comes back here. Yes, all the positions that were in the money now are coming back in about flat to being out 20 cents as the market actually comes back and dips past that mid 40s. But I'm okay with my read. I'll stick with it and see if we can actually catch a bid. I haven't added anything just yet, but I am looking out for the possibility of adding at some point on this move back down.
Well, I guess worth noting, right? Like the NASDAQ, I think, went right at green or close to it and then made a bit of a reversal. Let's try to channel. It's the ES that's a little bit weaker. I think you're obviously watching. Yeah. So this is going to happen because when we talk about the futures, oftentimes I'll be looking at the NASDAQ in particular, and Arun is trading the ES. So important distinction there. The NASDAQ almost went green in reverse. The ES has been weaker the whole way through. That NKTX, I'm not ignoring the stock. It did get up that double top. We got out at 16. It's consolidating at 14 even. So this is that's still pretty strong, right? Like I get it. It's starting to come back a little bit, but that's a pretty strong move. If it takes out this high at 16 even, that's a big level on the daily. It'll be a crowded short when it gets there. And there's room to 18.5, $19. There's still a chance for a long trade. Although, you know, when I faded off 16, sure, but I would have a stop at that high of the day every single time. We can also celebrate the PayPal bounce at least a little bit. Got some shares out. It spiked up to this close to 87, then retreated back as 86.5. I took the first third out, but it's now holding that support level. So that breakout is still working, but AMD is coming back in a hurry. Yep. Oh, load up chart. It looked like we were going to get through that 91.5, head up to that 95. Now it's really starting to churn back. So the question becomes, can you hold these levels of support? It was an 89.25 break. That was a breakout in the higher time frame. I think it needs to hold support at $88 on AMD. That's going to be an important level. And if it's NVIDIA that you were looking at instead of AMD, man, this is slow. My 3-minute hates me this morning. I can go to the 15 for you because that's probably working just fine. It looks pretty solid there. It's still holding above that 190 level. That's the support level I liked a little bit better for AMD or NVIDIA. I didn't like the breakout on NVIDIA. I did like maybe a dip in front of support. But AMD, I'm fine just trading that one. I got 3 longs that I'm pretty comfortable with. I don't have a short that I'm in love with just now. It would have been Facebook. But once it took out that, once Facebook got through that 183.25, that was a clear reversal every single time. It looks like that NKTX wants to make a test at 16 even. Like I said, I'm going to go short in front of 16, but that's a clear reversal at that 16 price if it goes.
Yeah, Netflix is having a rough time of it right now as Netflix actually is breaking through that 212 area as I guess, a support. And man, we might be taking a look at that 210 real quick here. Netflix stalling it around this 216, and it was working that 214. I was like, oh man, is this going to be an issue? And then I actually put out a bid, be like, maybe I should get out of this. And then it actually just broke down. At this point, if it bounces off here, I don't want to get out. But if it actually comes back in, it's going to be a problem. So we're going to have to leave it and see how it wants to trade. But if it gets back to that 216 and fails out, Netflix might be in trouble here as the market actually bounces around these mid-30s. Brennan.
Another one to look at, guys. FCX, big move down last week off earnings Thursday, if you remember. But Thursday and Friday, this is a 5-minute chart. We were straight southbound for FCX, just trying to bounce off $40. Huge level there for Freeport.
Oh my goodness, Freeport's at $40. See, there's always something that you didn't go over. And again, I was off a week, and that's not an excuse. But when I'm reviewing charts and going over these names, I didn't even notice if Freeport was down at that 40 level. Oh my goodness, that's pretty juicy. I'm not going to jump into anything after, without taking a deeper look at it. But wow, if you're going to bounce off this twice 39.5, 39.75, and can get back up and start to hold some of these levels, that's a juicy entry point. Facebook has come all the way back to this 183. So much like AMD, I think this is a want to hold on to it. The long isn't wrong just yet. I'll do this because it's easier than trying to flip. And again, this is just the NASDAQ trying to continue to break out. And if the NASDAQ breaks out and goes green, I want to hold these 3 long positions. And I don't want to get trapped in that whole thing of, oh yeah, I'm going to be averaging in and adding to it on the way back in. If this ends up being a failed breakout and the market tests those lows, there's no need to throw away the profit that the long has given you on the opens at this point. You can just hold out and say, okay, we're going to be long all day. We've got 3 positions that we can then work and then hold on to for bigger moves on the day. We're not green yet. I'm saying that because I hope it happens. But again, anything can happen in this market. And you want to take the profit while it's there. Just to check back in on Tesla for you guys. And this is the one that we didn't get into. It's trying to retest back closer to that 970 area. That's where, I think Arun said it too, that's where I would prefer the long as opposed to getting it tight to that 1,000. I think that gives you cover to take some out in front of 1,000 and get yourself a good risk to reward. It's starting to come back in as well. Like the NASDAQ is starting to really fail this breakout move. And we know what happens when you get failed breaks at the open. They can turn pretty bearish pretty quick. That's why we've been taking profit on the way to the upside there. And that NKTX, yeah, I'm going to keep coming back to this one because I think the potential is definitely going to be there, both for a jailbreak, but also for a bit of a rug pull. It's getting close to that 16 even. I'm not jumping in too early. I'm going to be patient with it. I want to see if I can't get something closer to 15.50 if I'm going to be short in front of 16.
Yeah, Netflix. Damn it, Netflix catching a sell wave. Okay, so Netflix is going to be breaking through that 211 very, very quickly. Here you go. There's your level 2. As Netflix comes back in, refused to get through that 260, and that turned into a big, big problem. And there goes a bid side move on Netflix. Okay, so that's probably going to end up being a hit there, unfortunately. Okay, so as the market comes back in, the market, for all the strength that I thought I was seeing earlier on, we've kind of lost it real quick. So I'm going to pull back a little bit on the future side. No ads just yet. We're going to stick with what we've got in the mid-40s. Netflix is going to come off. Boeing is weak, but it's crazy because the other ones are holding out well. Coke is flat. Veru's up to 26 cents. GPS, Gap, I picked up some Gap longs there as well, north of 12 even. That's up, actually down 7 cents or so. But the big ones, Netflix and Boeing, having no strength whatsoever. I'm looking quickly up top. What is NASDAQ doing? Down 0.78, and the S&P is down almost 1%. So continuing its extension to the downside, although I believe, or at least I'm seeing some sort of buy-side action. I might be proven wrong in a big way here as the market continues to head towards the sell-side move here. Remember, the overnight low is going to be sitting 1850, I believe, right? 42, 1850. My stop is going to be somewhere south of 15 even and change. Or we could still possibly, there's an off chance that there's a good move to the upside, but it looks like trend is continuing to the downside. Buy side move, maybe we got to change this bear back or a bull back to a bear because this market is not getting any strength to the upside as much as we would have liked. It ain't over. No, it ain't over until we actually snap through those lows and actually trade through those lows, but we're not catching any side of bid action right now. Right now, this could change in a heartbeat. What do we got? I wonder if we have anything coming at 10 o'clock. Sometimes the catalysts are like individual numbers that have nothing really, like they don't really have any strength in moving the market, but even just a positive number of some sort could actually move this market because it is heading to the downside in a big way at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely, and like it's starting to come back in. I will say this though, like PayPal's managed to hold the 86 level on the way back in. Facebook's doing a job of trying to hold 183 where we got the break, and the same thing with AMD. Like they've been all holding on this pullback. This SBFM, the small cap. Just a quick look here. Apologies not going over it. When it made that $4 break before the market opened up, that was a significant level because it's $4. It then held that as support on the way back in before the open, and it is trying to hold this again. So there is a chance that on decent volume, this can put in a bit of a bid at 4 and then retest that 5 even. This is a name that if I'm shorting it, it would be off of that $5 level, not necessarily anywhere here. I'd like to see it actually test that 5 one more time. It's holding a pretty significant bid, and I might have been way too picky with NKTX there. It's starting to reverse off that 1550. Like I said, I wanted a price closer to that or better. Now you're really starting to see it, sort of consolidate lower than that. I think the next press up it's almost more likely to break than anything else, but I'm still going to take a shot at that short regardless. I just feel like I'm not going to overreact to this pullback. I'm hanging in with the 3 longs that we got here. I was looking for some short opportunities as well, and maybe some other beat up names, and I wanted to make sure as I got into PayPal, come on, Block, pull up here. I wanted to check in on Block, which is up 1.5%. Strong move for them. It did not get through this 110 area, but it has a pretty solid basin of support as well. If you're looking for a late long here, the breakout on Block was probably much better than PayPal, let's be honest about it. But 102 looks like pretty solid support, 102 to 102.5 on Block. It's relatively strong compared to the other names I'm watching here, so I want to add Block to the list of names that if we can sustain this dip, looks almost better than the PayPal, which I already have on. So it's 102.50. You're still about $1.50 in front of that price. Not a horrible place to start, but given I'm already in some longs, I'd rather be a little bit tighter to that 102.5. Brendo?
I mentioned a big move in metal prices with Frank in the pre-market there, if you joined us early on this morning. Back to the upside, though, for a lot of individual gold stocks I've been seeing popping up on volume. Even GDX, you can have a look at GLD as well, another ETF in the gold space, but decent volume behind this move back higher, guys.
Yeah, gold's been, as Frank mentioned when we had him on, gold's been having a rough time. I kind of measured through GDX, which is the miners ETF, but at the same time, it's not an accurate representation, not a 100% accurate representation. You can go through the gold ETF, which is GLD, I believe. GDX falling from 41.50 all the way down to 35. The opening low was 40. Actually, today's low is 35.30, and we're bouncing strong. Looking, we're still down on the day, but opening move has been strong to the upside as some futures bounces. There goes Netflix to bounce. There goes a lot of these names, but Boeing hopefully can get a little bit more to the upside here.
There we go.
GDX, as it bounces off these 35s to the upside, the next level of resistance here on GDX is going to be these mid to high 36s here, as we get another space of about 60, 70 cents to the upside before we hit resistance on GDX. This is something I look at when the Fed's involved, right? On a regular day, I try to stay away from GDX. I'm not exactly a big ETF guy. If I'm going to trade something, I try to trade the source of it, so futures contracts for the most part. But GDX is a great way to be exposed to gold if you want to trade gold. And GLD is the other thing. The only thing with GLD I have an issue with is how thin it is. GLD is ridiculously thin when it comes to the level 2. That's your GLD. And then you look at gold, GDX, and you get a lot more juice. Well, right now they actually look somewhat similar, but typically you see GLD a lot thinner than the other one.
I'll make the point here, just to sort of double down on that. Almost every trader I know that day trades prefers GDX for the liquidity. Like, that is one of the reasons why. It's more scalable, and that's one of the things about looking at an individual strategy, and why there's always like a cutoff of volume. For some people it's price, for some people it's volume and liquidity. Because it doesn't matter how good a strategy is, if you can't scale it, it's not ultimately going to be worth it in the long run. So you want to avoid spending too much time developing something that might not be as scalable. So you lean towards that liquidity. I want to ring register a little bit more here, and I'm using, like when I left, or I guess it was a couple of weeks ago. It's been like 3 weeks since I've been on this desk, because I filled in for Brendan. And I was trying to use some of these ones that we don't, these graphics, PayPal starting to come in. And I was just complaining about PayPal not being as strong as Block when I looked at it. So when it got back to the high at 87, I took some shares off, only to see it immediately go to 87.5. So I'll go right back to the higher time frame and say, if we get through that 87, 87.5 area, we have room to 90. And if we're going to come back and we just sustain some of those bottoms, I'm going to hold out for 90 on PayPal. AMD, nothing's really changed too much with that plan. I'm sitting in front of 95 at this point. I could always end up taking the last of this out around 92. That's definitely a significant level, but the trend seems pretty strong at this point. Right, like anything that's sustained, that made that breakout, is giving you profit, sustained that entry point, able to bounce off of it in this market, which is still negative on the day. I think you want to hold on to, because if we go green, those are the names that you're going to want to be in. We did talk about Apple this morning in front of their earnings. I only liked the 200 period, right? That was at 159. Well, it broke 159 and then has put a wick bottom in. So it got all the way down to 158 and is now holding back at 160. That was a bit of a miss, because when it reclaimed 159, that was probably an entry point into Apple, but it still hasn't broken out in any fashion. You're still inside of the range, and I'm going to go with the ones that are showing the relative strength. Are you really What did
Yeah,
you do there?
now he's not a bull anymore.
allowed
He's
to
like
do that?
he's like turning into a bear, but he's not there yet. So there's still a chance that he stays a bull. But for now, he's a very weak bull.
I ain't gonna like that, man.
No, he's the one. He did it already.
We did it
and
already?
Sean's not here.
Okay. No, I'm just saying, it looks really weird. It's like all scrunched up.
Exactly, because he doesn't know yet. He's not committed to either side just yet.
What is he like? That's like the I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that one, but yeah, but you are right about this because the market, despite that break and despite some of the strength that you're seeing in some of these names, the NASDAQ never did. It tried to go green there. I thought I saw it tick green for a brief second, but it couldn't quite get there. Even looking at Facebook here, like it got to that 187 that we liked. Now it's reversed. Maybe I should have got out at 187, but it manages to hold that 183 a couple of times now. So, I look at that, and again, the 183, like this is that bottom from March at 183. It was about 183 and a quarter that I was looking at here. You also had Friday's low, and I always love when you're breaking through a level like that to test the short in front of it. It's just, there's so much room. If it takes out 180, all of a sudden it's a free fall Monday. But once it breaks, you've got to look at these reverses. One thing I wanted to get better at. It has not gotten through 87, but much like AMD, if it clears this level, there is upside, clear upside to 190. So holding on to this one as well. Brendo?
Another one moving, guys. CANG, which is a Chinese fintech, small cap fintech company, popped up there on a volume spike. They just announced a larger share buyback program for that one. CANG.
Wasn't Kang like the Kang was the villain in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like the alien? That was Kang, right?
I don't remember.
You guys, I know you guys will know this in the chat because this will happen, and I'm not as young as I used to be. You can tell by the gray hair. I usually have a really good memory with these, but I feel like it was Kang, just spelt with a K a little bit. But anyways, we'll check out any name that Brendan brings to us. You always got to make sure you pull it up, and of course, it's a New York stock because why the heck wouldn't it be? They got to do something about those. It should always be a NASDAQ stock in my estimation. And if
Krang, they say.
What's that?
Krang.
Krang? Are you sure it was Krang? Okay, no, I trust you guys. If it was Krang, it was Krang. But if I see a wick top like this on a gapper, that's usually almost always going to be a short trade. I'm going to look for shorts on this stock because look at the wick top at $3. Right, like that's on a huge volume, makes a spike up through 3, fails at 3 1/4. That just to me screams a shortable trade in front of 3. I haven't had to pay for a single short this morning, which felt like a little bit of a trap. But I'll see if I have to on this one. No, you don't have to pay for on Kang either. Weird. Everything I have checked that is a small cap runner has been free for locates. Maybe there's something about these moves. Maybe that's why I'm all long today. It's like all the shorts are crowded. But either way, $3 for me, that's an easy short off of $3. If it breaks, I test it at $3.25.
Yeah, talk about. I feel like this bear right now. I'm all long, but I have zero confidence in my longs, even the future position I have, because every time we buy up, we get, like every attempted buy is caught with the sell. Guys, can we pull the lower third so you guys can see this chart? Every time we buy up, every chance, we move into the mid 30s, at least to 40, it's sold off. It's like people aren't done selling just yet, although there's enough buying here to, if this market were to get going, there's enough buying to actually run this market to the upside, but it's running into sell side action as people are stepping down from the 50s and refusing to let it go. Now, what I'm thinking now with the way it's moving around, what might happen is they actually break the lows, set the stops off, and then flip it around later on, which could be, if they go deep enough, that could just get me out of the way as well. But that, unfortunately, that's going to be, this is the market you're dealing with right now. Sell side action on every bounce to the upside. So fade the sells apparently is going to be the move that happens right now. Boeing is still out. The Netflix is still out. If Netflix can get high enough, I would actually like to pair some risk on Netflix and just walk away from it completely. I think I've got everything I want in terms of absolute risk. So maybe Netflix will pull that off because Netflix is now flirting with that 213 area. Remember, I'm pricing the mid 214. So one more attempt on the futures to the upside could be enough to get us going and get us out of Netflix and maybe get some. GPS is in the money, 13 cents. Veru's in the money, 12 cents. But the other ones are still out. Coke is still out. Netflix is still out. Boeing is still out. Boeing is not, Boeing's doing what the market's doing as the market breaks 20 right now. Boeing's doing the exact same thing. It's attempting to buy up and catching nothing. So it's coming to the sell side again as the market takes 20. Let's see now how we're going to deal with these 20s. Is it going to be a false move through the lows? Remember, 1850 is the low. 1850 is the low, right? I believe so. 1850 is the low. If we can, 1850 is the low. Maybe snap through the lows, put some stops off, and then snap back up. I mean, that's the only chance we have at this point.
And I want to thank you guys. Kang the Conqueror. There was a Marvel character called Kang. That's why I had it on the brain. Oh, Twitter, I never got that 50 level. Like, Twitter goes to 50.25. I'm like, okay, have a tight stop on the 51 because 50 is a level to play off of. I don't know why I'm missing data on these charts. They've hated me this morning for being away. But 50.25 looks like that's where it's going to hold. I still think there's some limited upside there, but 50 and 51 have been good levels. I don't like the 51 long at chasing this move, but I will revisit the 50 if I can get it. I did take Kang to the short side. You'll see it. Yeah, you see it pop in there at 290. Again, $3 stop, 1-to-1 to 280. I'm not covering anything until it gets to 75, then 65, and then 50. Sort of low-hanging fruit, those price levels, but that's the wick off top at the $3 level, which was the previous pre-market high as well. So the only short I got is in that small cap, CANG. Otherwise, it's riding those longs, and they're still working in the money. Not as strong as they were before, but certainly, whether it's AMD managing to hold out that 89 level, that's what I care to see have happen. Unfortunately, it's the NASDAQ that's starting to continuing to go the other way here. We kept trying to break out that high. It's now twice. We've tried to take out the top on the NASDAQ. Both times have been faded in, but we haven't actually tested the low. So that doesn't invalidate any of the long positions which have already paid off, and I'm not going to get out of them until we test these bottoms or break some of these support levels that we got in front of. Oh, Brennan, sorry.
Hey guys, yeah, 10 o'clock. Let's get a quick check here of how things are shaping up. Pretty red right across the board. You can see 1.3 there for the S&P, the Dow a little bit better off. The Russell, actually, there was initial strength in some of the small caps this morning, but also kind of fading off at this point. The NASDAQ as well, trying to hold up a little bit better, 0.75, 0.8 for the 100, and the composite here in Toronto, 1.6 now. For the TSX, as we said, some gold stocks getting hit back to the upside, but we're initially pretty weak. Twitter, we talked about. If you joined us in the pre-market this morning, there was just a huge volume spike that came in as we retested that initial 50-80 area for Twitter, trying to roll over once again, head back to the downside. Also, keep in mind some oil stocks and energy weakness, a huge flush for XOM here off the open from 83 down to 81, guys. Back over to you.
So we're going to get out of the futures. Good thing we never added the rest of this position. So we are going to take the hit from the mid-40s down through that 15 area, now bouncing back up. But this opens up a can of worms here that I'm not sure I want to deal with. So good thing, the only good thing we have right now is the fact that the NASDAQ, a lot of the positions that I've got are somewhat heavy tech. Well, I guess not. Netflix and Veru for the most part. But the NASDAQ's actually holding up well relative to the S&P here, with the S&P being down 1.25. NASDAQ actually only down 0.7. So with strength, we've got Twitter still moving to the upside. We've got Netflix refusing to break that 211 to the downside, which is, I guess a glimmer of hope for Netflix for the most part. But apart from that, we've still got GPS in the money and Veru in the money, barely in the money with the longs. But maybe time to start looking at the shorts here with the break. That was the best chance we had at a bounce. At this point, I'm not even sure where we can bounce from. So I'm going to change this bull to a bear at this point.
Don't say it.
I mean, if we can't bounce off these 10s, there's very little hope this market's going to run to the upside. I think we're going to take a look at those 4,200s. Odds are, So for now, we're just going to leave them be. I'm going to just manage what I've got, the 5 positions on the long setup that I've got that are still, refusing to hit the stops. So not accelerating to the downside as the market takes off, but holding on for dear life here on these 5 longs. And then we'll see if we can't grab another trade on the flip side, which is going to be the short side, in the event that we actually continue on down.
Well, it's weird. Like you said that I just got the stink bid on Coke in front of that 65 level. So I got 65 in front of 65 half. I got 65 there. Kind of weird thing. Every once in a while, you put in a price like that. It's like, okay, I just like the symmetry. Then when I put the order entry in, but really it's in front of that 50 level. And I did pick up the short as well on NKTX. So again, the only shorts I have are in these small caps, NKTX and CANG. This is in front of that now double top, close to triple top at $16. 16 also a level on NKTX. I want some out in front of VWAP because it's been strong. And if I do get this first fill for the buck, I'm going to hold through a 14 breakdown. Because if it breaks down 14 at this point, I think you're seeing 12.5. On NKTX. It's just that kind of a move. I mentioned getting into Coke just now. I know you're already in it, Arun. I was looking to buy that dip on any kind of a pullback in front of that 65 level. So my stop is going to be beneath that 65. And when it got there on Friday, it did hold it But this is a stock that'll not trade with a ton of volume, so I don't want to have an even dollar stop. Give it like 10, 15 cents below that before I would get out of it. NKTX starting to work, but I want $1 on that first leg. That Kang that I was just able to pick up as well, showing some signs of wanting to maybe go back through that 3. Go to the 3-minute chart so you can see better. Like it got close to that 275, but it's already consolidating lower. This does feel relatively safe. It's already put in that wick top at 3 even. It makes that channel down. I want to have some on board in case it breaks 250, but this thing closed at 236 on Friday. So it's not very likely that CANG, I don't think, is going to trade too much lower than that 250 level here, but that's plenty of juice. From a short in front of 3. 250 is not a bad level to take it out in front of. So, but I don't expect too much more than that.
All right, as this market now is heading to the downside, we're out of our futures position, not adding. Yeah, he's changed.
That was quick.
He's made his full transformation as the market has now gone south of 42.10 to the downside. So here we are. Let me pull you guys on the S&P futures here. E-minis, there you go, 42.10 on the downside. We're now bouncing off of it. Given how close we are to 4,200, it could easily just be a magnetic pull right towards that big round number as we keep on heading down to the downside. Again, any attempted bounces were sold off, so sell side activity is not done. You know, we made some mistakes here. We're going long. Some of them are holding up well, but a lot of them aren't, right? Netflix, Boeing still not holding up well as the market continues to go to the sell side. I'm going to look at some names that I can potentially go on the sell side here with. I'm noticing AVGO is down 2.5% to the downside, so that's an option for potential sells. And could I go for this around 570? That's one option as well as it heads. This is the acceleration to the downside. So 570 is going to be next up on AVGO. I'll keep an eye on this one, but that could be one trade to take.
You know, I never actually refer to Broadcom as AVGO because I'm like, it's just a bad ticker. But Broadcom, that's an interesting look there. The only shorts I got on the small caps, and then NKTX, as you were saying, and you actually turned it to a bear, and then we got back down to VWAP on this stock. So the 1550 short just printed the dollar. If, like I said before, if it breaks down, I'm looking for 1250-ish is the last out there, and we'll see if we can't get that. It's still setting up right now for a potential breakout. If we get through 14 even, I'm going to cancel my stop breakout at 16 because that's just too far away from it to like a stop order on a reversal automatically. I'm just not going to do it. But as long as we're holding VWAP here, I'm still reversing from a short to a long. Always think about what's next, not necessarily what I'm in right now. AMD, as you keep saying, it could turn bearish. AMD's trying to hold on to this level where we broke out from. It's been doing it so far, but eventually we're not going to be able to hold through. It doesn't look like we're going to necessarily get that 95 target. When you get a breakout like this, if we can't actually hold this support, it's not a great sign. Usually you're retesting those lows at 88, and if that happens, I don't mind getting back into this trade down around 88, but I'm not going to give it all the way back. I'm not just going to hold it $1 just because I happen to like the long trade. I think that's kind of a little bit reckless. But AMD has held for now. Facebook has managed to hold as well. PayPal, all three of those longs are still holding those breakout levels that we had this morning. Ms. V.
Hey guys, 6,300 people are watching and only 1,100 likes. So please, if you didn't like this video yet, I remind you, smash the like button. Please support the community. And also, we've got a super chat from John Borges. Neil, should I take my loss and sell CLF? John, sorry to hear you're having a losing trade. I wish you to recover as soon as possible. And Neil, maybe we can take a look at CLF together.
Hopefully my daily chart wants to cooperate on CLF. This is, so I actually own some, daily chart doesn't want to load. I actually own some Cliff myself. And I took it off when it got to $30 a while back, so I can't say that I've been in this one for the ride. This last consolidation, and again, I don't know if you got long this morning. If you got long this morning and took on a break and took it out, I can't, I have no issue with that trade. Like if you try to break out here and then it took out that low, fair enough. Like that makes a lot of sense. Or you're looking to take it at that bottom, that would make a lot of sense. If this was more of a structured, I was long in this consolidation in front of $30, should I be taking the hit here? It is breaking down on significant higher time frames. I like the space and I like the stock. I just talked about liking Freeport down around $40. I kind of might prefer that to Cleveland Cliffs here. For the long-term view, I don't think there's any. If you're 2 to 5 years, I don't think you're taking that hit. But if you are in that short-term range, sometimes when these levels go, you just have to take it out. And if you were long in this consolidation when 30 is gone and you took out that low, or you're taking out this 27.5 low, sometimes you have to adhere to a stop level when it gets hit. That's what would make sense to me. I wanted to be able to show you the daily chart to sort of exemplify that point. It's not through that low, so there's still reason to believe that it could have held that bottom. So I think what we're really getting at is if you don't hold that low today, and if it doesn't hold that low today, and your long was in front of the 30 consolidation, that's a reasonable stop limit for any kind of a shorter duration trade. If we're talking about the long term, I'd be holding it for 5 years. But that's just me. I got some U.S. steel. Freeport to name that I'd be looking to add to, as a matter of fact, at that 40 level that we just saw. Cleveland Cliffs, I've been out of for a while. I just think once that 30 was gone, the trend isn't exactly that great, and this daily chart sucks, so I'm going to get off of it.
Yeah, I'm looking at this market going, okay, well, I got out of Netflix, by the way, cracked 210, got out, and then bounced right back north of 211. We're going to take the hit on Netflix. The other positions are actually stable, surprisingly, right? We got Gap still stable, up 6 cents, Veru up 10 cents, and then Coke and Boeing, but Coke out $1. Coke is actually having a rough time, actually, because it continues down. But for the most part, given how fast this market fell off, Coke not falling off that aggressively. Boeing obviously has been a controlled move to the downside, as you can see on this chart here. So I'm a little confused on how to proceed here, because I don't see enough for more longs here, but at the same time, I don't want to position on any of these shorts here. So what do? Neil? Hold it.
See, and that's, it's weird. Like, I added that one like a year ago and I never used it, but it was essentially because when all there is to do is hold on to the positions because you've gotten in, you've got good levels, and nothing's invalidated it, then you hold on, right? Like nothing is approaching stop outs for me on those longs. That's why I'm not giving up on them just yet, and never give up or sleep on Brendo when he's got a name.
Another Chinese name popping back up again today. We talked about DOGZ back on Friday off negative news. This thing absolutely fell apart from $7 down to $2, if you remember. We just got back above that high, guys, on a decent volume spike. Also worth a note, Match, MTCH up on some Facebook rumors. Apparently Facebook having a look at Match, guys.
Don't say.
Really? They look interesting. I mean, see, part of Facebook's issue is changing business. They have ad issues, Meta. They have ad issues, of course, with the Apple change. So they're changing their business. They've been losing a lot of the younger audience. TikTok's been kicking their butt, and then on top of that, you're spending a bunch of money on this transition to the metaverse. And so going out and making an acquisition could be a tough pill to swallow. I would say for some shareholders, maybe that's, again, it's still strong and it's still holding that breakout. So I'm going to stick with the long for the day trade here, obviously. But, that's an interesting one there. I think Match, it's good for Match, obviously. But, I'm going to say I don't necessarily love that for them. It makes sense for a lot of reasons. I think the timing of it could be that trouble for those guys. But anyways, that's just me sort of bagging on them a little bit, guys. And I'm getting a little bit frustrated. You saw these lower highs get put in. I was just showing Facebook, and it's the same thing with AMD. Like, it's up a couple of points here, and the NASDAQ is now trying to go green. This is where you get if it doesn't jailbreak here, right? Like, we're now putting in a third set of lower highs on my 3-minute chart while this is happening on the NASDAQ, reapproaching these longs. So if we're not going to get this breakout now, we're not going to get this breakout on AMD any higher. So you can't really ignore something like that when you see it. One of the reasons why I said take some profit on NXTX and it has to NKTX and it has to be a bit of a reversal is it held VWAP so well, right? Like it held VWAP. I said it's a reversal if it takes out 16. So I reversed into the long position. It's now halted to the upside. This was free to short. And the last time something was free to short and I ignored it, I think it was Veru.
Oh, I have no clue.
Either way, but this was free to short on a low floater that's gapping up, which meant that I wanted to try longs first. We had a long breakout early, 13.5 to 16 even. We then tried to short off of that level. It did work to VWAP, and now we're long into the teeth of the, well, not into the teeth of the halt. It halted at 16.53. I'm long 41s here. I'm not going to cover. It used to be the game where you take some shares out on the reopen. That hasn't been that good recently, so I want to hold through this reopen trade and kind of give it back to this 15.50 or 15 area and see if this one can now go. Indicated open is 7 cents higher, but that tends to not matter till you get closer to the 5-minute mark when the stock's about to reopen. If you're curious, just ask. I'll let you guys know where the indicated open is, but right now it's pretty flat.
All right, so one thing I remember, I was slightly confused on what to do with the market, but then I quickly took a look. The one thing I thought about is, okay, I can't have outright trades, but one thing I look at is there's a huge divergence between the NASDAQ and the S&P, right? S&P down 1.18, NASDAQ only down 0.35. Then I look for relative strength inside the NASDAQ. What do we got from top to bottom in terms of weighting? We've got Apple still down 1% on 1.3% on the day. Relative strength is in Microsoft, Google, and Facebook, right? We've got Google up 1.1%, and then Facebook up 0.35. So I'm thinking, okay, those are the top names that matter, that have weight. Microsoft's the number 2, and that's got relative strength. So I decided to go into long on Microsoft here at, you can see it on the board if you guys scrolling there. It's 275.07 is the long. It went as high as 276. The setup is pretty solid. I like the way it's been holding up. It looks pretty decent. I can put it against that 272, the opening low. Well, not the opening low, but there seems to be some volume around that 272.5 that I can work with. So why not play relative strength in a market, in an index that's holding up well? If we're gonna fall off, given how much strength I'm noticing in Veru and GPS relative to what the market's been doing, and Boeing still has not cracked away from that being down $2 area. So for the most part, most of these names are holding up well. Apart from Netflix that actually snapped underneath, everything else held up well. So now I'm playing relative strength in Microsoft to the upside. If we can actually get up high enough, then I'll spin this trade around. But for the time being, the only read I have is relative strength in NASDAQ, in a NASDAQ index name, and see if we can actually get going. Because if we were to get to the upside on the NASDAQ, remember, it has to be done through Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Tesla, and Google. And for the most part, you're going to get strength off of Google and Microsoft that are going to lead the way. It seems like even in this down market, those two are holding up well. So let's play Microsoft to the upside and see if we can actually get a runner going, because it is working those 276s. It's attempting to get through those 276s, but getting no juice as we kind of snapped up, snapped down. Now we're only up 30 cents on this trade, but again, this story is not done here with Microsoft because of its relative strength. Futures bounced to 25 and snapped right back down, so sell side action still coming. Every time we bounce to the upside, we got sells coming in. Every time we get some buying, I think Microsoft can take another leg to the upside, and hopefully we get enough buying to actually accelerate this to the upside as we now get Veru. Let's take a quick look at Veru, because Veru has been somewhat flat for the most part. I'm long here at 31. We got as high as 70 and change, and then we kind of just fell back off. So I like the daily on Veru. That's the only reason I'm long on Veru. So why not take a holding, like Neil's little animation there said, hold it. Just hold it. I like the daily. Why can't we get north of 12? We have a chance. This market just needs to turn a little bit. It doesn't look like it wants to turn, but again, if I play relative strength, I should be somewhat okay if I want to play on the long side only. So for the time being, we're going to hold these and see how much further we can get on all these names. Brendan.
A little one just popping up here. LPCN, guys, just out with FDA approval on a drug, apparently. So back above $1 here for LPCN on volume.
Yeah, and just an update, this NKTX, its indicated open has been 1660 to 1620 the entire time. It's gone back and forth a little bit, but that should be opening up. I just want to quickly double check this one for you guys. It should be opening up in about 20 or 30 seconds or so. Looks like AMD is going to give it up, man. Like it was, and again, always take profit on a breakout style trade, because that's what breakouts are. Like you're not buying it off of support. You're not getting the greatest price in the world. I think 88 can still hold, but if we cannot managed to hold this 89 area, I'm just going to have to give it up. It's just not as strong as some of the other longs that we've been able to have here. Like both PayPal and Facebook are holding green every single time. There's NKTX on the open. So it ends up opening higher, above 17 now, but almost immediately running into some resistance when it got through that 17. If it can hold out the halt price, that 1650 area, this one could be another jailbreak, but you got to think about where you want to be taking profit. I'm going to throw a tighter stop here because it looks relatively weak at that 16 level. If it can't hold 16, I got no problem getting right out of it. And then we'll see if we can't run to 1750. And if it breaks 1750, you almost have to think the real jailbreak could be on in a second halt trade.
Yeah, it's crazy because a lot of these, when everyone's looking at these names, it opens high. I notice this every time. It opens high breaks the next level up and then snaps back down. And if we can actually withstand, on NKTX we're talking about here, if we can actually withstand through this halt price, which is around that 1650 area, if they can't withstand it, this may just go right back down to that 1550 area. But if they can catch a bid and actually hold up well, this could actually go right back to 17 and continue on, continue its move to the upside. As I say, this market's heading back down to 15. Again, this is going to be back and forth. Until we get a clear read on this, I don't think I'm going to actually just give you guys market commentary on the futures because, again, we took a shot in the morning. It did not work out on the long side. And then here we are breaking through the lows and refusing to move to the upside. So I'm thinking that 4,200 is a possibility. So when we get to 4,200, if we get to 4,200, I'll let you guys know. Maybe we'll make a move at that point. But until then, relative strength is going to be the name of the game that I'm going to be playing anyways. With the way the market's moving, at any point in time, it could snap up. But at the same time, it's, you know, I don't have enough for shorts, but I don't. There's some longs that I can pick and choose. So I've kind of gone ahead and taken those longs. And Coke and Boeing are just kind of going sideways for the most part as Boeing bounces around all over the place, but it refuses to go. It refuses to choose a direction. So clearly the early move is to the downside, but from this point on, it just kind of wants to rotate around that 173 half area. So we're going to leave Boeing to make its mind up. NKTX is trying to catch these 16s and maybe bounce off of. Coke is actually heading to the downside. So down goes Coke, but upside trend is broken. But again, we've got that daily. They need to clear this daily in a big way to break this trend in Coke here. Let me get Coke here. Okay, here we go. So if we end up snapping through these 65s, you can see the issue it turns into, right? We stalled out initially around 67, went down, overnight action into 65, bounced back up, and then attempted to take the high out. Now, if we can't bounce back above these 66s, Coke's going to have a hard time because remember how fast we were moving up? If a trend like that is broken, it's going to be ugly. So 65 has to hold. If 65 breaks, this could actually open up a nice multi-day short here on Coke as well as Microsoft. There you go, Microsoft. Make me some money because I need to make some of that money back that I lost on the futures earlier. So as Microsoft now breaks 276, there we go, 276.50. Here we go. This is the kind of acceleration I need from Microsoft. If the futures ticks up even just a bit, Microsoft takes off like 50 cents because that's relative strength for you guys. And sometimes that's all that can hold you up right now in a market like this when you decide to be on the wrong side of things for the most part. Relative strength is what saves your bacon a little bit. So here we are, Microsoft making some money back here and holding on until we get the other ones going. Hopefully we get Coke maybe turning around these 65s. That's an option as well. And then Boeing is going to be the other big one that we need to get going and start flying high, Boeing. Come on now.
Yeah, I mean, like, even as the market tries to come back and go green, it's like I got stopped out of that last of the AMD, like the last third there. It'll be a positive trade, but it just did not sustain that move strong enough. I might have got out of that too early, but Facebook, relatively speaking, and PayPal just holding up a little better. I finally got that first fill on Kang, by the way. Like, it got that show. We've been in this one for, you know, like 30 to 40 minutes here, and it just finally printed 275. Again, no real threat at that $3 level, but it's been sort of tough, not tough sledding, slow sledding to the downside. I'm going to get a bit in front of 65 and then, you know, be almost all out in front of 250. 236, like I said, where it closed, definitely looks like a key price. I got wicked out of NKTX, so I just really jumped right back into the trade there. As you are seeing it still hold these key levels right after that halt trade. The long's still valid. I'm going to give it more, just a few extra cents below that 16 so as not to get wicked out. Already time for the small cap recap. Good timing. Let's go to Brennan at the big screen.
Hey guys, yeah, busy morning. Lots to discuss on small cap side of things this morning. We were talking about this ERYP just before the open. I mentioned 220 and then 250 above that. Sadly, we couldn't get locates. It was blocked initially in our system, but then we couldn't get locates. So I missed this, was not a part of this, but 220 ends up being a pretty good level down to 175. Support from the pre-market here right now. If you wanted to take a shot at fading that one. SBFM, I mentioned off some positivity initially right out of the gate. This high going back to Thursday of last week came into play. So I took a shot at that just versus that 450, 475. A little bit low on the volume, so we'll see what happens with that one. CYN was another one I wanted to mention there, but you got the picture. Back to the downside for CYN as well today, guys. Back over to you.
Yep, and there goes Microsoft. After taking out that 276s, decides, nope, we're going to do a U-turn here and fall right back down into those 274 halves. Again, if we're going to catch relative strength, this is where we got to do it. The only other option is Google, but Google's like $2,000 for a share. So I have my price points. I don't trade that high in terms of prices. So we're going to work with Microsoft on relative strength here, all the way down to about 272 and change. So we'll work these 275s into 272, give it some space, let it play relative strength as the futures refuses to bounce up. So all these names that we were looking for, yeah, they're not getting any push whatsoever. GPS is now down 7 cents, and Veru's still holding well, but Veru's doing its own little thing again, right? So it's not responding that much, or it's not as sensitive to the market moves as the futures, just stalling out around these 15s, bouncing up maybe into the low 20s or so, catching an offer, and then back down to the 15s again. It's gonna, at this point, the way we're moving around, it's gonna have to be all about those 4200s, because that's where we're trading around. So magnetic is the word I would like to use. Anytime we get into these areas where we are not that far away from a big round number, it tends to gravitate right towards that level. So 4,200 seems like the price point. It's going to be a rough day. The only thing I can say is you can't win them all. Last week was terrific in terms of trading. So this week is starting out rough, to say the least here. From the equity side, from the future side, it's starting out a little rough. But hey, I think a lot of traders go through this, and you got to understand, it's not a day-by-day situation. You got to look at the bigger picture. For me, I look at it on a weekly basis. I have 5 days. I know that over the course of 5 days, I can turn a positive week. That's just your averages. You got to know your execution. Huh?
You look at it that short, like 1 week? I almost don't care about a week.
No, but
like a quarter.
Yeah, you could look at it a quarter, but for me, I look at it like in terms of execution and whatnot. I know what my averages are throughout the week. And I know over the course of 5 days, I know I can turn the week positive, right? Even if I have one, because you're not going to win every single day. That's impossible. So if you look at it from a per day basis, you're like, oh, I got to win today. And then tomorrow you come in, I got to win today. It's not the case. You got to look at it from a bigger perspective. And I know that although I'm having a rough go of it, as I say that, I look up, I'm like, wait, Microsoft, did you just jump $2? Now I went from being out like I went from the down 50 cents to being up $1.50. But going back to what I was saying, it's not about the individual day. You got to look at it from a longer perspective, because regardless of whether you're having a terrific start to the week, if you know what your averages are, you're going to roughly land somewhere in your average week, right? So regardless of how you start the week, or unless it's like a crazy week like last week where you're blowing out your targets or what your average wins are. That's special, but on a regular day or a regular week, understand that you don't look at it from just 1 day's perspective. You got to look at it from a bigger perspective. I like to go for a week perspective. There goes Microsoft to 277. Neil likes to look at a much larger multi-month perspective, but again, that's how you got to trade. You got to know what your averages are. You got to know what your math is on your trading. As the future's now deciding to move to the upside, maybe this guy's back going to be slightly, maybe the Bulls trying to come back over a little bit. I don't know just yet. He's confused. I'm confused.
The NASDAQ's now green.
The NASDAQ's green. That's why I'm playing relative strength. There goes Microsoft up 1% and $2 in the money. Here we go, Microsoft. Cover some hits here, please. And then at some point, we might get a move on the futures. But again, one thing I will say, though, given how this market's moving, I think if we get back into these 50s and stall out once again, I want to take a shot at the short side. Although we're moving strong right now, given how we're trading in these 50s, that's a problem. We need to clear this in a big way. What? He's flat? No, he's not there yet, man. We need to clear 50 for him to get long.
You guys, okay, so to be perfectly honest, I haven't had a single big cap short at any point. And it's weird for me because a lot of time with this kind of weakness, I'd be looking and trying to find something, just holding on to the longs. It's hard for me not to just immediately change this back to the bull, but fair enough. We'll keep it halfway because that's what you want to do with it. I just look at the strength the NASDAQ's putting in here and say, Apple just bounced off that 159 again. That might have been, if I wasn't in a bunch of longs holding them, Apple off that 159, which is also your 200 period, again, holding up this market. Like the second it made that bounce, that's where you saw that spike in Microsoft, and Facebook went back a couple of bucks in the money there. PayPal went back about $1 in the money we've been holding on to. I'm wishing maybe I hadn't gotten out of that AMD just yet, but the market's holding up pretty nicely, man. I can't really complain about it right now. It's the NASDAQ breaking out. The question becomes, can the ES sort of follow suit? It's nowhere close. I shouldn't say that. It's getting closer to those highs. But if it takes out the high, then we can start going. The only long that hasn't worked was the dip buy on Coke, and maybe it's a case of just how strong it's been. But it's held at 65 level. So this is still pretty valid, I think. Now 2.5 in the money on Facebook. This, to me, is still a long day. Like it's that it was so bad on Friday that the risk to reward favored the long side of the trade. I'm going to stick with it. There is also that NKTX, by the way, which is doing a heck of a lot of nothing after that halt. And usually if it doesn't go after consolidation like this, I'd be like sitting. It's weird. Like I'd normally be sitting in the short instead of sitting in the long. Both those are valid, by the way. Like you can sit in the short, play it to VWAP with a stop at the high of the day. That's better than 1-to-1. Or you can sit in the long with a stop just like 15.75 or so, risking under 50, risking under $1 to play it off of a breakout. Both those work so long as you have a stop out in mind. I'm just choosing the long side because when it's free to short and it's still a bullish trend like this, I've usually paid the price for not being a little bit more aggressive or sticking with the long until it really goes parabolic, which to me, it hasn't really done that yet. Like we've broken and given some scalp trades long, but there hasn't been that parabolic breakout. So I'm going to favor that until it breaks down and gets below 14 even. It just stopped out of the long, so maybe it's time for me to hunt the shorts on this name, but I've only shorted small caps so far. Haven't taken a shot at a big cap one just yet.
As you can see, we've got a baby bear right now. It's a tiny bear. It's about to lose its ground, but again, because of where we are and how we're moving through this market, it's entire possibility that we catch an offer once again. Again, it's going to be all about those 50s, right? Once we get north of 50 and we can stay strong and withstand any sort of sell side action, it could actually. If it can withstand some sell side action above 50, yeah, we got some strength here. This guy's going to be a full out bull at that point. But for the time being, he's been flipping back and forth. I've been flipping back and forth. I've been along all day for the most part, apart from one position that got out. But again, I have zero confidence in these longs given how the futures traded. So individual trades, right now the only one working out is they're going to be the relative strength play in Microsoft here, up 1.1%, up almost $2 in the money and moving well. Boeing is coming back in here from these. That's not the chart that I want to use. Let's go with Boeing here. Boeing, we were working with a daily level. Remember, I was looking for longs early, so I looked for, again, what trades could potentially bounce, areas that we could bounce off of. Boeing had this 172 area that we could work with. That's the only reason I went for longs on Boeing. And we came into the morning and we're like, well, you know what? Is there an option to go long on Boeing here? And it seemed like there was a good chance that we could catch a bid on Boeing here around these prices. So around these 175s looks pretty good. Turns out that was roughly the worst possible price you can get. And now here we are kind of bouncing off these to mid 172 and change back into 174. Once we clear that 175, we could feel a little bit more comfortable with this idea. But for now, GPS has now gotten back to flat. So that's a, well, penny in the money on GPS after being out a little bit. Microsoft is still kind of leading the way here, up $2. And then Veru is also starting to go with 34 cents in the money. We've still got Boeing. Boeing's got about 60 cents left before it comes back to being flat. And then the weak one, Coke. But the problem with Coke isn't responding. Coke is not responding to anything. It's just falling off here. After cracking that 67 early, it is just not responding to this market move as the market has gone about 27 points from the bottom here and now working these 42.37, and we're still getting going here, but there's a big resistance zone in the next 10 points, which we need to clear to get going.
True. But the diamond hands are working out at least so far. Facebook is at that 187 again, only up 1%. But hey, the market just went green, right? This double, if we break this double top, and it's actually not a bad entry point if you weren't long already. If you look at this 187, if you play that back, you have to give it a couple of dollars. There's room to like 190 if this gets going. So there's still, I think, $3 worth on the Facebook side of the trade. I'm just going to do this instead of flipping over to Tesla because Tesla now is a double top as well. Missed a chance at the dip buy. It didn't quite give you 970. But it gave you 975, maybe 980 would have been worth it as well. But Tesla, a bit of a double top as well. PayPal looks like it might not want to give $90. It might not be strong enough. And I sort of went over to and showed Block as well, saying maybe I should have gotten into that break. 86 is the one I took. But just like Facebook, it's a Friday lower high that it's trying to churn through. This is 87.5. If we get through this, I think there's room up to 89.90, which is the final target. I'm not offering this one at that price just yet. But again, the market's starting to really churn to the upside. So holding on to these longs looks like it was the right call. The one I did get out of was, of course, AMD. Okay, Again, it was the weakest of the three at the time, and sometimes these don't age well, right? But that was the weakest of the three, so I put the tighter stop onto that trade. It's now also looking like it wants to give up 91s and head up to that 95 level. So getting out of anything that was long without the bottoms being tested, to me, was a mistake. I want to hold on to the rest of these. I do have that Kang stock still to the short side, and again, when a small cap does like a wick off top like this and starts failing, you just kind of hold on to it for the duration, which is what I think is going to end up happening here. Looks like it's the longs. Longs are strong. You know what?
He's not there yet, man. No. You might regret this.
We're going to Brendan, and it's on the. Look, the Nasdaq's up like 2/3%, and we never retested the lows. We're the Nasdaq around here. What's up, Brendo?
Big mover last week, guys. Redbox Entertainment, RDBX, just popping back up at highs from last week. In fact, Thursday, just being tested there. So RDBX back up 30% once again. 10:30. That means there's an hour left in the session over in Europe. Let's get a quick check on how things are shaping up on a Monday. Miss V, what's going on over there?
Hey, Brandon, European markets dropped to 1-month low on China slowdown fears. Dutch health technology company Philips is down more than 11% after reporting a hit to its first quarter profit. Back to you.
Negative session here as well continues, but as we said, on the way back to session highs, guys.
Yep. We need to clear this zone right here. We just, Neil turned it into a bull. I don't want to be premature on that one there, but if we can get above, it's a bull with no limbs at the moment. So once he gets north of 55, see Neil jumping the gun again. If we get above 55, it seems like then we can actually put some limbs. But Neil's going to go ahead and put some limbs on it right now. So he's going outright bull.
No, I just didn't notice that the arms were
I'm going to stick with the longs that I have. Like you said, Neil, hold it. I'll hold those positions, but not yet on everything else. If we get above 55, then I'll be more comfortable with the idea of holding on to these longs. But I will be looking to cash out some, especially on Microsoft, because that is my biggest winner right now, up $2.50.
Okay, so that graphic doesn't even look like me, but maybe we can work on that one. It's an older one that you guys probably haven't seen before. I'm going to look at SkyH in a quick second, and no, it's not that I want the longs to go to the upside, chat, so that I can short the top, although that's always a good setup. Speaking about shorting the top, that's my horrible segue to that red box that Brennan just mentioned. I obviously was not here last week to short this level, so I didn't see it when it happened. I'm going to make an assumption that Brennan shorted this and probably did well with it, but looking at a high like that at a $4 level, it's hard to ignore, especially when you have so much overhead room to next level up, which is like $5. It's almost like, okay, that double top breaks. You can only think about a long, but when it gets there, there's going to be a lot of people looking to short it. It already put in one wick top before $4. So there is a chance that this stock wants to fail here, but the volume has been climbing on the way up. So I'm going to give it some room to try to test a little bit higher before I would jump into this. But when you look at it on that 15 or look at it from last week, it's hard to ignore that double top and want to play into it. I had to pay for shorts for the first time today, 2 cents a share, so I'm sure RDBX is a stock that Arun will not trade because he had to pay for shorts. And by the way, so even Coke, which was the only long that was not working, that's now starting to break out. So yeah, it's bullish here today. At least it feels like. Just keep in mind, the SPY has not turned green. Like the S&P 500 is still in the red, has not taken out the high of the day, as I'm sure Arun has mentioned to you guys. But if Coke gets back to 66, which was pre-market support, I want to get some out and then play the rest out in front of the high. Despite the good earnings, it's still relatively weak on the day. Facebook just seems like a stronger hold. Overall futures, if you got Apple, congratulations. I don't know why, after saying there's one level to look at on Apple, and it's 159, and it's the 200-period moving average. Well, look at all the longs I have at 159. You can count them up, right? All these longs, these green arrows on my chart at 159, they're all amazing because they're not there. Going to miss out on some trades, obviously, but that's kind of one of those dumb ones where I'm looking at the futures and in a bunch of longs, so saying I'm not going to add to it. That one stood out. And the reason why it was so good is it gave you one of those trap to shorts at that 159 level. Like it broke this barely and trapped some shorts in there and then makes the jailbreak. Now, I'm not chasing this to the high. It's more along the lines of hold on to your long trades. I will take some out of Coke, but the rest we've already scalped our profit. It's about getting the most out of the trade at this point. I did want to check back on one name, and I knew I wrote something down that I ignored, so apologies. And we talked about oil. I never actually got the trade on in Occidental because I wanted to fade off of 55. Well, I just never was able to get the trade. It did pop up a couple times at 54.5. It's still trending to the downside, so it's still valid. At this point, like the move has already happened 2 or 3 times to want to chase into it this late. We'll stick with what's working. You just had to be aggressive with this short. You know, there was never giving you that 55 price. You had to take 54.5, which I obviously wasn't willing to do. So if you're in it, great. The trend is still working for you. The level hasn't been violated. Keep an eye on spot prices, obviously, but you know, if you got into the short, it's working. And it's a counter trend type of trade anyway. So like a lot of times oil will go down when the market's heading up. So that's still valid. I just don't have it.
Yeah, as the market now is working these 50s, and this is the area. Now, you know, as long as we can stay above here and actually withstand any selling, then, you know, I agree with this guy here with the bull. But at the same time, I'm taking a little bit of profit here, on, especially on Microsoft here as we work these 278s. That's almost $3 in the money, right? So we fell off a little bit here, but actually you don't see it on this chart. Let me pull it up on one of our charts here. As we were working these 278s, I'm taking profit. I figured, you know what, at this point, as you can see, I just took some out here in front of that 278. The reason I went for this is this is kind of the area where we stalled multiple times on Microsoft on the way down on Friday here. We bounced around that 278 around, looks like around noon or so, and then also a late session move at 3:30 where we kind of rallied up and then failed again. It's going to be somewhere in there, so why not take some profit? It's a big winner. It's a big runner. We've caught the move. We've caught the bounce. And then we've got that as, you know, the leader in this relative strength play. So I'm locking in as much as I possibly can, and then we're going to let the rest trail out. Boeing briefly turned positive here as it approaches that 275 again. Now coming back in a little bit here as the market fell off again. It's these 250s. That's my whole thing, is these 250s need to be able to withstand any sort of sell side activity, and right now they can't. So until we actually can do that, I'm still going to be on the short side. I'm going to do damage control, meaning taking out profits on Microsoft, getting out of positions that aren't working. If I can get out for flat or so, Boeing might be one of those positions. If we can't get strength around this 175 again, I'm going to walk away from Boeing, call it a day. Coke is actually attempting to bounce for once, but then as it gets through 66, coming right back in, respecting that previous low of 66.10 as the futures comes back in. This is exactly what I was worried about. And although we got this guy here, but again, we need it to stay above 50 and hold on to any selling. So as long as this sell wave can be bought back up and get us back above 50, at which point I think I'm more comfortable with the idea of a long. But until that happens, I'm actually on the hunt for some shorts on the futures here with a setup, right? So as long as we keep doing this type of sell side activity, I'm going to be looking for shorts here if I can't. Remember, we tried the long, didn't work out. We went close to 4,200, 4,207 to be exact, bounced like 40 points, and now we're catching a sell side move back in the same mid 40 level, which had resistance earlier. So I'm going to be looking for some shorts here. I'm probably going to do damage control on Boeing, maybe take the hit. What's the Boeing hit here, 70 cents? Yeah, I may just walk away from Boeing and take the hit and see if I can reduce positions elsewhere as well.
I'm looking for a trail on PayPal. I'll give you a couple of reasons why. Like one, just to remember, Arun's looking at the ES, so he's watching the NASDAQ, sorry, the S&P 500 futures. I'm often looking at the NASDAQ, and this is the difference. I have my chart up. We're going to get to PayPal in a second here, but the NASDAQ with the breakout, getting to Friday lower highs, and then pulling back. This is the ES not breaking those highs of the day. So you're at resistance points. Like it makes, and this is the thing about getting different perspectives. Like I get it, like I am all along, and we're joking around about the bear bull back and forth. We are looking at a bit of a divergence here in terms of the relative strength in the NASDAQ and the ES, and you've got to pay attention to that when you're looking at some of these names. So yeah, I think PayPal can continue this break. I still have the 90 as the target. I still have Facebook if it can. It didn't sustain the 187 break, but we're still above 85 right now. So I still think that 190 target is pretty valid at this particular point. But with both of these, it's like take your profit at first level. That was at 87 here. And if it sustains a break, then you hold out for the bigger move. I want to maintain that, even though I think PayPal is showing some signs of bucking the trend. When it comes to Coke, I did, like I said, take some profit at that 66 when it got up here the first time. Look, it's a double top at 67. And then off of that double top, the first consolidation was about at that 65, 66, right? So, the top end on Friday was 66. I'm going to take some out in front there. And if we can't get through the high, I'm just getting it all out if I get a shot at that in front of 67. I just don't see Coke. It's just not strong enough right now, unfortunately. That Kang, which is one of the only ones that I am still in, to the short side of the trade. It does look pretty safe there. And I might have missed RDBX as we sent it to Brendan for one of my favorite segments when I was filling in for Brendan was actually doing Sector Watch. And when we got the board back working, let's go to Brendan for Sector Watch.
Yeah, very red, unfortunately, to show you the board here today. There is a few things of note in positive territory, but 0.8 right now for the overall market. Moderna, one of those, mRNA, standing out this morning, up about 3% in the healthcare sector. UHS there, 4% in the equipment maker group. But this group overall, healthcare stocks to the downside today. Energy at the top here in the top front and center. Leading the way, in fact, to the downside for the overall market, along with material stocks. A lot of those names we were talking about, FCX, CF there, Mosaic as well. Mosaic down 5%, almost 6 in fact. The strength coming from tech, semiconductors specifically, back to the upside. We were wondering in the pre-market if there was going to be some follow through. Some of the software names also catching a bit of a bid today. There's a few individual names here. Twitter, 3%, obvious reasons. Match as well. I mentioned that possible Facebook tie, catching a bit on that. Industrials and banks. Yeah, banks among the leaders as well to the downside today, guys. Still, 0.85 for the S&P. Back over to you.
As the market backs off, again, a concern that I had, some of these names are coming off here. So like you guys may see that I actually dumped my Boeing position here. I'm taking the hit now. I don't need to hold on for hope, right? Because the market's not doing what I wanted north of 50. The Boeing is absolutely failing these 175 breaks or the break back into 175. I'm going to take the hit now. I can just walk away from it. Veru's taking off. Yeah, Veru's a nice 68-cent winner to the upside here. Our targets on Veru, I'll get to Veru after I talk about Boeing here. Boeing, as it comes off, I'm just going to take I already did take the hit just at 174.30 and change. So walk away from this. I don't need to waste any more time or money with Boeing because it's not responding to that 175 area the way I wanted to. So take the hits when you can. You know, like you got to balance it between, you know, letting a trade work out and also taking the hits when you get enough information saying, hey, you know what, you're wrong. Instead of holding out hope, just dump it, man. Just move on to something else because your time and your money could be used elsewhere. So that's what I'm thinking on Boeing. This could still work out later, but I also don't need to give it time. Veru, hello Veru, as making up some money here on Veru as it approaches that 12 even marker as it jumped from that 80. Because last I checked, it was at 80. We've got a 68-cent winner right now. As of right now, I can get some out in the mid or right in front of 12 actually, or even at 12. But the thing with Veru is I actually want to see it go higher because if we were to go to the daily here, you'll notice that we can actually target maybe the mid 1250s here in the last few days. If I were to go to a 60-minute chart here, you'll see that the majority of the action sits around this 1250 here. So why can't we go up another 50 cents? I'll take another 50 cents. I'm sure a bunch of you guys are in Veru as well. So why can't we go up another 50 cents? We have nothing really stopping us to do it. So I'm kind of backing off here a little bit, just letting it go, put an offer out somewhere in the 40s into the 50s, and then just trail it. If it wants to fail this 12, sure, fine. Come back into the 1160 area or something like that. I'll walk away with 30-something cents, but I'm going to give it a chance at least to get into 1240, 1250 before I start taking profit. I'll have some targets there waiting, but at the same time, I'm not going to step into this too early. Coke. I think Coke is not going to be a fun time. I'll give it a chance. The reason I'm going to give Coke a chance and I'm not going to cut this one like Boeing, the reason being is because Coke is actually sitting around a daily level, like a big daily level, which is only 30 cents away. So it doesn't make sense to get out now when we're so close to that daily, which could just pop this thing off, right? So it doesn't make any sense, but Boeing is nowhere near that level. So although Boeing is bouncing now, I still want no part of Boeing. As Veru still going, okay, the 12 is gone. And we're going to put a bid out or an offer out and maybe cash them out if we can get past 40.
I know you're not going to hit a key, but let's do this one for Veru. I missed, so it's a weird thing because Veru was a thing before, like when I was on the desk for Brendan 2 weeks ago. And then when I came in today, I'm like, oh yeah, it's still on my watch list. I was like, it's probably not doing much of anything because it's been over a week. So I neglected to even look at it. Always a bit of a mistake. It was one of those, it was just a miss. I'm glad you got that one because it's still looking pretty strong. There's a lot of names that are moving. I do want to check back in. I'm in PayPal, not block, but I did mention that this was relatively stronger. For whatever reason, it was just PayPal spoke to me at 86 for the break, and we're still hanging on to that one, even though it's kind of failing that 87 again. it just tries to break out from there. Not a lot of velocity. I think it's because that ES is not joining the party, just a guess. But Square holding up really nicely, up 3% versus the 1 for PayPal. And it's holding VWAP. If we take out VWAP here and this can't hold 104, that's no good for my PayPal trade. So I am watching Block pretty closely, of course, watching the futures as well. Facebook, I think, is still going to be a bit of a hold at the current levels. And I was a little bit too patient with RDBX. That one's now starting to fall over, so miss that short for sure. But it is time to go to Brendan. We have our guest of the day.
All right, thanks, guys. Yeah, the rare earth space and battery metal space continues to be very, very hot this year and coming out of last year as well, as we have mentioned many, many times. Happy to have Arena Minerals with us today. William Randall, CEO and president of Arena, joining us today for the first time on the show to talk a little bit about the work the company is doing currently in South America, looking for and developing lithium projects and also lithium brine, which we'll get into a little bit here because I want to make sure everyone understands, where we are in the process of the metal to when we get to lithium brine. But it's great to have you, William. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about Arena.
Yeah, Brendan, thanks for having me. Arena is a lithium developer with assets, as you mentioned, in South America, actually in the Lithium Triangle, also sometimes referred to as the Saudi Arabia of lithium. It covers parts of northern Argentina, southern Bolivia, and northern Chile. We actually have 2 assets in that part of the world, and we're looking to produce lithium chloride directly from the evaporation ponds, which is a bit of a novel approach, a bit of a new business model that we hope is going to make a difference in bridging the gap between supply and demand in the lithium space. We're run by a team that's done it before a couple of times, actually, which is rare in the lithium space. And in particularly our executive chairman, Eduardo Morales, who is the genesis and the creator of what's now Albemarle, one of the largest lithium brine producers in the world. He sold the predecessor company to Albemarle for $6.2 billion in 2014. Shortly after that, we teamed up and we built and developed another asset in northern Argentina, which we sold again in 2018 for just under 300 million Canadian. And we're now doing it for the third time with what we think is our best version yet, a bit of a new business model that simplifies the production process, lowers the operating risk, the capital required, and is a lot more environmentally friendly.
We've seen just absolutely amazing growth and growth potential going forward, obviously, in this space. So I want to talk a little bit about the extraction process here and where along the manufacturing line and, right from the extraction through to when a battery is made, this product actually fits, just to make sure everyone understands, what exactly it is we're talking about here.
Yeah, well, the first step, primary producer or looking to be, that's where we're aiming to be in a few years. And from us, this is extraction of the resource in one of the richest parts of the world. And then we're actually partnered with Ganfeng Lithium, who's one of the biggest processors. So, a company like Ganfeng would take our product and process it to produce a lithium carbonate or a lithium hydroxide that would then go into the cathode and or anode producers, and then assembled into the actually battery cells and on into laptops and electric vehicles. So yeah, so we're on the very first step, operating, as I said, up in northern Argentina. And keep in mind that this is a pretty hostile climate up there. We're 4,000 meters above sea level in a high altitude desert, really, with next to no rain, a lot of sunlight, and of course, ideal conditions for lithium production.
Talk a little bit on that further, because it creates an opportunity for the company to work in a very environmentally friendly way, in the sense that we're using solar power and there's a water aspect as well. Tell us a little bit more about how the company itself is dealing with those very harsh conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. So typically, the way lithium brines are processed and produced, we would extract the lithium and they would go through evaporation ponds and then onto a chemical plant. The chemical plant is very energy intensive and uses a lot of fresh water. So what we've done is we've created a process in which we're producing lithium chloride directly from the evaporation pond. So this uses pretty much 100% only solar power, natural solar power, and no fresh water in the process at all. And this is something really key in what we're doing. Not only makes business sense, it's also much more environmentally friendly in an area, of course, that doesn't have lots of fresh water and very little infrastructure. And the local population obviously is supporting us greatly because of this initiative, and also in the permitting process, the ministries, et cetera. So we're really happy to be making a positive difference in that aspect.
When it comes to the overall sector here, we're talking about electric vehicle and battery production, obviously. It's hard to, really put into words the amount of demand and the increase in demand that we have seen to this point and will continue to see in this space. What do you expect from the company's standpoint that growth to look like going forward?
Well, I mean, as you mentioned, we're already experiencing it. Prices have gone from, $10,000 a ton of lithium carbonate all the way to spot prices as high as $80,000 as a result of that gap in supply and demand. I don't think, we're going to keep seeing this massive increase in pricing, but the gap is still going to be there. So we're going to maintain a really nice high price of lithium carbonate going forward. Countries such as Canada have set objectives of 100% of new sales, auto sales, to be EV by 2030. And for us to meet those demands, we're going to have lots of producers, especially in our area of the world, in the lithium triangle, that hosts such a large amount of the world's resources. And we hope that our business model is going to be a significant contributor to that growth.
Great time to be in the space. Arena Minerals, we're excited to see where this continues to go in the near future and going forward as well. AN on the TSX Venture Exchange here in Toronto, guys. Also, AMRZF are the tickers. That's the OTC listing. Happy to have William Randall, CEO and President of Arena Minerals, with us. We appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this today.
No, thank you.
Great space to be involved with at this point, guys.
Yeah, you don't have to sell. You don't have to sell me on being in that space. I think we've talked about that one in the past, Brian. Another fantastic guest and fantastic interview. And again, it's not just about we talk mostly about these tech stocks and what is moving, and that's going to be the nature of the game. But educating and bringing on important guests like that is part of it. I promised you guys, and I know everyone was talking about Sky H, and I saw it in the chat over and over again. I didn't really get to it quickly. It's at the high again. Just be careful with this. It's 4 million shares. In terms of volume today, but there's right now the spread's like 2 or 3 cents. I've seen it open up to 10 to 15 on this thing, and we're at a double top right now. The volume's been good, but it's deceiving. This liquidity is a little bit deceiving. It's a good, strong move the last couple of sessions here, but you are starting to get back into this 950, this 10, where it could run into resistance. Just be very careful either direction, but I think especially when you're shorting something like this, because you have to bake in that extra, whether it's 10 to 15 pennies worth of possible slippage when you trade something like this. Again, the spread just opened up to 10 cents as I was watching it right now. So it's not quite in the wheelhouse in terms of something which is trading at a level that I'd love. I think I'd like to see it test closer to 10 if I was going to short it at this point. I'm not chasing it along in something this thin unless it breaks out from that $10 level. From there, I think it gets pretty spicy to get to like a 12, 12.50. But otherwise, I'll be very patient with Sky H and be careful with that spread. Brendo?
All right, guys, as we said, a monster week to come for earnings. Let's get you caught up on what is coming after market tonight and before the open tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, UPS. I like UPS. UPS is a great one to trade to. Pepsi's out. PepsiCo. Yeah, there you go. Coke came out. Coke is not a great trade today, apparently, on the long side, but Pepsi could be one. General Electric, GE, the big dog, coming out as well. So that could be a nice one to trade. And then Novartis, if you want to get fancy and get there with some scalping opportunities. DHI, DR Horton.
Yeah, we're probably not in a good environment for DR Horton, but hey, I mean, the expectation.
But you know what? Veru is taking off, eh?
I told you,
it's still going. Oh. So here we go. So look at that, going 1270. This is our long here at 1131 in the pre-market. We got some out here in front of that 50. Like I mentioned to you guys, it's still going north of 50. Now we're working 1270. It's $1.35 in the money. You know what you guys asked for? You guys asked for a bang, but you don't get a bang because Sean's on here, but you do get a pew. because that's your sniper shot on Veru as it still goes to the upside. Level 2 on this is probably going to look nuts. Yeah, they're going to take a look at 13 as it actually accelerates right to 13 at this point. There's 18,000 shares on ARCA at 13, I believe. Nope, 25,000 shares on NSB. So NSB NASDAQ holding on to 25,000 shares on the offer. You guys see it right there. So it'll be some volume there to get through, but I think given how it's been moving, it's going to get through it fairly quickly as we're going to let this one go to the upside. This kind of goes right into a question somebody was asking earlier. Valeria sent to me, he's like, because of a Microsoft position, which I'm fully out of now, it's like, how do you play relative strength? Well, as you can see, I wanted to go long, but I couldn't find ones that were actually stable, so I was getting run over on some of them. But late in the session, as the market looked like it was going to turn, I'm looking for the ones that aren't actually as down as much as the market was. NASDAQ was negative, but Microsoft was still positive, so relative strength play will tell me, hey, if the market were to turn, Microsoft, which is a large index name, and with the index being negative and Microsoft being positive, that means other markets or other stocks are driving the index down. If the market were to turn, then the large index name would actually would actually accelerate first. So that's kind of my whole thing with the relative strength play. It's not the relative strength indicator. I don't use indicators, those kinds of indicators just yet in my trading, but that's how I was looking at Microsoft for that long. Valeria.
Hey guys, I hope you're all having a great start of a new trading week, and please join Prad and me right after to continue trading. Also, please double check if you like this video, and happy National Zucchini Bread Day, everyone.
Is it?
Oh, that's good stuff, man.
What is it? I can't even see it.
Zucchini bread.
Oh, okay, yeah, I get down with some zucchini bread.
You know, of course you are. I mean, that's actually one thing that the caterers could do with that breakfast tray. And by the way, I did notice that obviously, and I love Sean, we've been boys for a long time, but of course we actually had the tacos when I wasn't here. Like with like that Taco Tuesday thing has been like, hey, will they ever do real tacos, not the fake? But I was the first person to complain about those taco bowls over and over again. It's like the one time they're there. I know Prad missed it too, so hopefully it'll be like a weekly thing.
I had Prad's tacos, and I told them they were delicious. But to be fair, I'm just appreciative of the tacos is all I can say about those tacos. So take that for what you want, but
than Taco Bell.
I don't know. I'm on the fence about that one. Pratt wants to know if our tacos were better than Taco Bell. Personally, I mean, you had more control over how you made them. But, I mean, I'm on the fence about that. The meat was definitely much better than Taco Bell, but I don't know by how much.
Look, man, that's not saying much that the meat was better than Taco Bell. Anyways, look, I've been there too, because when I was in university, they had those it was like on Monday night, it was 69-cent soft tacos.
Ooh.
So, like, first of all, if you're on a university budget and you've got like Monday night raw coming
soft
at 9
or hard
o'clock,
tacos?
Soft.
Always. There you go.
So we'd roll up there, and I'm calling on my roommate, by the way, what I'm saying. We'd roll up there, get to the drive-thru, and be like, okay, we'll take, I think it was like 40 soft tacos, and just fill the bag with hot sauce. Because it's the vehicle for hot sauce, right?
Yes.
And then the Monday Night Raw would happen. We watch it at 9 o'clock and then again at 12 because we're losers. And then that was our way to go. It was not the kindest thing for, afterwards, but hey, it was cheap. And Taco Bell, I would never eat it again because it's not a real taco. You got to make them at home. You got to do it right. Get a good salsa. Homemade is fantastic. That's the way to go. It's been good to be back, man. I'm actually kind of gassed. And thank you. On a personal note, thank you everybody for all sort of the well wishes. Sean, he's hopefully feeling pretty good, and hopefully he'll be back as well. We're doing a great job filling in for like 3 weeks, right? So we're running through this, and thank you all for the support. Now we're back to bear territory.
He should have been a bear. I told you it was premature when you moved him to a bull. It wasn't ready yet.
It ain't over, man.
But he was too early at 50. We needed to stay above 50 for this market to get some stability. He was
Market hasn't decided. Market hasn't decided yet. We're sending you guys to Trader Brad and Miss V. Maybe the market will pick a direction during the midday show. Let's go.
Welcome to a new week. It is Monday, April 25th. Time for Midday Market Movers with the beautiful Miss V and Trader Pratt.
And beautiful Trader Brad. Guys, welcome back. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Please, as usual, be active on the chat. Ask us anything. And please like this video already, Brad. I saw on our mutual chat that you were trading like Netflix.